Well, it is 5:30. I think I should call the meeting to order if everybody is ready here. Abe, are you guys ready on your side? Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. I call the April meeting of the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission to order. Roll call, please. Can we please have a roll call, Dina?
Yes. Okay. Chair Hansberger?
Present.
Okay. Vice Chair Trouth?
Present.
Commissioner Thiele?
Present.
Commissioner Standerfer?
Present.
Commissioner Wong?
Here.
Commissioner Gross?
Present.
And Commissioner Johnson.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first order of business tonight is approving the minutes from the March meeting. Hopefully, everyone has had a chance to look over the minutes. Does anybody have any comments? Is there a motion? Are there any changes?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, perfect. Now we can vote on the motion, and we're going to do computer voting here, so it just takes a second. I need to get my, oh, geez, you're speedy.
work?
Yes. Although I must be doing something wrong. Oh, there we go.
Glenn.
Anybody need help?
Commissioner Johnson? I can just do a hand vote if that works. Okay. Trouth. I think we're good. Right. So the motion passes 5-0 with, let's see, it was Commissioner Standerfer abstaining, along with Commissioner Wong abstaining as well.
Okay.
Apologize for abstaining. I was not present last month.
Yes, I remember. I remember. That was, I appreciate that. Thank you. Glad to see you this week, or this month. Yes. Okay, well, our next agenda item is oral communications. And so this is a time for the community to come up and address any issue they have with us. There is a 3-minute time limit. And just so the public is aware, we cannot engage in dialogue with the public speakers on the issues they bring up to the commission because we are not allowed to do this if it's not a published agenda item. However, we are listening and we can address the issue at the end of the meeting during Commissioner's Corner or if it relates to another agenda item this evening. So do we have any speakers tonight, Dina?
We do. First up is Carol Heel. Following Carol will be Julie Mallon.
Good afternoon to all members of the Traffic Mobility Safety Commission. I'm Carol Heil. I live off Vulcan Avenue in Coral Cove. I'm going to start, Abe, the PowerPoint. I've never done this, so bear with me.
Is this yours?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, although I start this presentation with slides from Quail Garden Road, I'm speaking in open comments to a non-agendized item, Vulcan Avenue. The first 3 slides here depict the current status of Quail Gardens Road running north and south from Leucadia Boulevard to Encinitas Boulevard. Okay, it's not going forward.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me see if I can do it. Okay, maybe I can do it.
There you go.
Just let me know, I'll change it.
Okay. It's got safe sidewalks for safe passage, excellent auto pavement with clear painted traffic lines. You can go to the next one, please. and designated and distinguishable bike lanes. Next slide, please. In stark contrast is Vulcan Avenue from La Costa Avenue to Encinitas Boulevard. The condition of this road is dangerous and often underwater. Our needs for safe mobility for pedestrians, bikers, and autos are dire. Next slide, please. Thank you. We lack sidewalks or even a safe walking path. You can go to the next slide. Yes, okay. And just hold there for a second. The line in the picture, so it's the last picture on the right, is our current walking path. It's just a line painted on the pavement on Vulcan Avenue on the east side of the road. Next slide, please. Our bike paths are insufficient and must be shared with cars. And there's a gentleman walking his bike across the tracks. Next slide. Our road conditions are unsafe. Current striping is at times unseeable. And then the next slide. And with the current rains, there are more potholes and cracks, making it more difficult to maneuver your auto, bike, or even having safe walkability. Next slide. Adding salt to the wound, we've been cut off from east-west passability. As importantly, north-south walkability is restricted every time there is a rain. Next slide. As we all know, there is much development coming to our small corridor with the 73 apartments at 1967 Vulcan, the Alila Maria Village with over 120 units, and 48 homes on La Costa Avenue. Our current infrastructure cannot handle this. Next slide. The city of Encinitas applied for 2 grants, both at ATP and then SANDAG. Both were recently denied. We need to find new ways to find funding and keep Vulcan as a top traffic and safe mobility item for our city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, next up is Julie Mallon. Following Julie will be Dolores Lodo.
Hello, my name is Julie Mallon. I live on a Heritage Lane in Encinitas. Thank you all for working tonight for us. I really appreciate that. I don't have a slideshow presentation. That was pretty good. And I'm afraid I'm more concerned about the Quail Gardens traffic area and us trying to, neighbors coming on in. We're just trying to figure out how so much development is being put on that 1 mile stretch of Quail Gardens. I know this may or may not be inside the purview of the committee, but it certainly is a concern that this will be causing additional traffic, even though our street's kind of nicely lined and everything, but there's still a lot of traffic that's going to be going up and down that street. And we're just really having questions. I'm having questions as to how decisions are being made and processes are working and what the next steps are here. So just starting to attend and pay attention and watch and speak out. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, next is Dolores Lodo, followed by Jillian Pillsbury.
Good evening. My name is Dolores Lodell. I live on Hillcrest Drive in Northwest Leucadia. I'm here to advocate also for better mobility for us, or any kind of mobility, really. I do not have anything prepared, and so what I'm going to tell you is just what my experience was just driving here tonight, this short distance. I live on Hillcrest Drive, so I'm pulling out of Hillcrest Drive, and I'm going to turn left. Should be fairly simple. You can't see. There's cars parked right there in front of the trailer park, Trailer Rancho. So it blocks the line of sight. So you have to pull past the limit line, past the stop sign, in order to even see to get out. So you do that. Oh, here comes a car. All right, well, they have to kind of maneuver around you, and or you're lucky like I was tonight, and I was able to pull out without pulling out in front of somebody. So I pull out, I turn left. There's a person walking along the supposed area where we're supposed to walk on the east side of the road that's lined with the new lines that it was mentioned that you can barely see in some areas. She can't walk there. There's cars parked there. So she's walking in the street, there's cars coming. There's also an e-bike coming right behind her, which I assume is gonna go around her, and there's cars behind that. I look over to my right, there's a gentleman, I'm not kidding you, walking across the train tracks with a six-pack of beer from the liquor store. Not kidding, I'm not making this up. Then this is normal. I drive a little bit further, there's somebody crossing across Vulcan, slow down, make sure I'm going the speed limit, of course, but make sure that they get across in time. If it's at night and you don't see them, because typically they're dressed in all black and they walk out right in front of you, you slam on your brakes and your pizza that you just picked up falls in the, I've had that happen before, falls in the floorboard and falls all over the floor. I get up a little bit further and all of the trash cans are out. And so people can't walk in that space because there's trash cans there. There's other people walking around the trash cans into the street. I can go on. I get up to past Leucadia Boulevard. There's somebody parked in front of the trailer park there with their lights on, blocking the roadway. All the cars coming, sorry, I've always had trouble with direction, northbound are having to go around that. So they're all stopped on the roadway trying to get around that car that's just parked there for whatever reason, trying to unload, I guess. The point is, you saw the pictures. I mean, it's a mess. Our mobility is just not good, and we need help. And I just want to continue to keep this on your list. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Our final oral communications is Jillian Pillsbury, or excuse me, Jillian.
Hi, good evening. Like Dolores, I live in the northwest end of Leucadia, and I'm here. I don't have a beautiful presentation like the other lady. I'm just here to share my feelings about the speed and concern I have in our neighborhood. I've lived at Eolis for 19 years, and I'm representing several neighbors tonight who can't be here as well, and they've submitted their statements. Every day, we have cars speeding by, going approximately, we've seen at times 35, 40 mile per hour. When you had the radar thing installed in front of 1655, which was directly across from my house, I could sit in my front yard and literally watch it clock off like 35, 40 mile per hour. With all the recent development, with the construction vehicles, there's tremendous more amount of traffic. They're using our street as a thoroughfare to go from La Costa to Leucadia Boulevard or the other way. Where I happen to live is on the downhill slope from Parkwood heading toward Hillcrest, right before where the roundabout is now. And the cars, when they come down that hill, they really pick up speed right after Parkwood. So this is between the area of 1640, 1652, and 1655 Eolis, and we would really like a speed cushion placed. Let me try to be specific. Just north of Parkwood Lane, toward the hill, going toward Hillcrest. In addition, just to slowing down local traffic, one morning recently, there was an incredible amount of traffic heading south on Eolis toward Leucadia Boulevard. And my desk faces Eolis Avenue. So I'm sitting there wondering what is going on because I've lived there for 19 years. I know what the normal traffic flow is on my street. Sure enough, there was an accident. So then all the cars are being rerouted. There was an accident on Highway 5 right at La Costa. So all these cars are then zooming through our street trying to get around the accident. I'm also concerned, as I mentioned before, about all the housing projects going up in our neighborhood, and this is going to add many vehicles using Eolis to get in and out of our neighborhood indefinitely. As noted throughout the community, there are speed cushions now with cutouts for emergency response vehicles to move at a more rapid pace. I continue to be flummoxed as to why we cannot have them on our location, yet they're right down the street from us on Sheridan, Orpheus, throughout the community. For example, on Devonshire Drive, right next to the hospital I work at, there's speed cushions. So anyway, we need calming mitigation efforts in our neighborhood desperately. And I did submit one photo to show that there was recently a Volvo that was smashed in its driveway right on Hymettus one night due to a speeding driver. So I don't know if there's that picture or not. But thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Abe, do you have that picture or?
I don't think it was submitted for we received emails for it, but I don't think we received, we have it.
Okay,
here
I do
for-
think that, yes, we got an email with it, so yes, thank you very much. Is that it for public speakers, or?
That's it, yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for your comments tonight. It's much appreciated, and we do hear you, and we are listening. Next on our agenda is special presentations and proclamations, and it is the Sheriff Department data report. Is our traffic sergeant, is it Jeremy Collins? Is that who it is, or?
It's supposed to be Jeremy Collis, but Jeremy had a previously scheduled vacation this week, so I'm filling in for him this month. I'm Matt Chavez. I was here last month. I'm a collision investigator with the Sheriff's Department. So Jeremy should be here next week, and he's the new traffic sergeant, so you'll see him all the time, or you'll see him next month, rather. So this is the analysis from the month of March. And as you can see, we have a breakdown up there at the top. We had a total of 83 collisions within the city of Encinitas, and then 148 citations were written. If you take a look down at the bottom, there's a list of all of basically the hot spots for citations, areas that are targeted, or common areas where citations are written. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see a list of where all the collisions occurred. If you take a look at the map, you'll notice golden colored circles and then blue dots. The golden colored circles represent accidents. So the very small ones is a single collision. The medium-sized circle is 2 collisions, and then the largest circle is 3 or more. And then the same goes for the blue dots. The small one is 1 to 4, the medium one is 5 to 12, and then the largest one is 13 or more. So you can see that in downtown Encinitas, a lot of our citations are focused down there and near that last stop sign before you start heading south past Swami's, and then near the 2800 block of South Coast Highway down there by the lagoon near Cardiff. That's another one where cars are really picking up speed, so we'll get a lot of citations down there as well. And then as far as collisions go, common areas are the major intersections typically. So Encinitas Boulevard at the 101, El Camino Real at Leucadia, and then Encinitas Boulevard at El Camino Real as well. That's pretty much it. Were there any questions?
Do commissioners have any comments, questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. I know Jeremy was supposed to be here. But
Yeah, Matt Chavez.
Matt. Thanks, Matt. In terms of one request I had to Abe and Amanda is what we're trying to do, I think, at least a little bit, me personally, but also the commission, is to try to collate traffic crash data with citation data. So with the crash data, we're able to get that via Switters, and we prepared quite a few maps on that now, looking, we can get back all the way 10, 12 years in crash data. I've requested access to historical data on citations, though. I'm just wondering if we could actually have access to that.
Okay. I'll write that one down, and I'll pass it on to Jeremy and see if he can get that going. I know that our analysts kind of put this together, so I don't know if anyone actually has access to it, like general access, but I'll pass that along to Jeremy and see if we can get something like that going.
Thank you. And then just a follow-up there. So we do have some traditional historical data that comes from every one of these MTSC meetings. You guys provide the report, and you have at least since November on my records. And if you look at the crash data going back 10 years, you can cut this by 10 years, you can cut this by 5 years. It's pretty clear the majority of accidents happen around Leucadia Boulevard. So in the last 10 years, the number one hotspot, as you mentioned, as a hotspot is El Camino Real. Number 2 is Encinitas Boulevard and Vulcan. Number 3 is Leucadia Boulevard and Quail Gardens. Number 4 is Garden View and Leucadia Boulevard. And after that, it falls pretty steeply. But you could take out half of the traffic accidents just by doing something on Leucadia Boulevard. Mm-hmm. I noticed in the maps, at least based on the last 4 data, where still there's the majority of accidents or crashes, happening on and around Leucadia Boulevard, it still seems like the majority of citations are actually much further south in Cardiff. So just wondering why, and there's a lot of historical data and then even more recent data shows that it seems like we should have more eyes on Leucadia Boulevard based on the number of collisions we're having. And just curious if you have any comments there.
Yeah, I think that, I think looking at it, you would assume that a lot of the collisions are related to speed. But that's not necessarily the case. When you take North El Camino Real and Leucadia Boulevard, for instance, that intersection is massive. There's so many lanes and so many cars going in so many directions, and it can be confusing for people at times. So I think a lot of just movement within the intersection can lead to minor collisions, and those collisions get recorded the same as a major collision. A little low-speed fender bender is a hash mark, just like a massive collision that was speed related is recorded the same way. So again, those areas where we do target tickets is primarily for speed. We just don't see as much speed in those locations where the collisions occur. But again, I'll pass that on to Jeremy as well. I know Jeremy has some new plans for the traffic unit, and we just picked up 2 motorcycle deputies, so we'll have more enforcement out there. Those guys are starting next week, I think, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's great news. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson here. Did I hear you say that speed was a major factor in accidents?
It depends. I mean, it can be. I don't know that it always is, though. Most of our collisions are going to be low speed, fender bender type stuff, like at intersections. We do have some speed related collisions, but within the city, most of them aren't related to excessive speed.
I have a quick question. So, Abe, when we look at the data, some of the accidents, or one of the higher accidents intersection is the Quail Garden, Leucadia Boulevard. And I know that has historically been because there lacks a left-hand turn lane there. Can you just update this group about, I'm pretty sure that is getting remedied, correct, with the new lights that are coming in? So I think that actually will hopefully improve that intersection. I just was hoping you could maybe share that information.
Correct, Chair. We do have a grant project from Caltrans for 4 of the signals in the city. The contractor was hired to add protected permissive left turn phasing at these 4 intersections. Leucadia and Quail Gardens is one. Santa Fe Hospital by Vons is another. The other 2 are Vulcan at Encinitas Boulevard and Vulcan at Leucadia Boulevard. These 4 intersections will be getting protected permissive signal phasing. The poles are ordered, and the material and the equipment needed for the signal modification are ordered. We've been told we should expect them sometime in June. So hopefully by the end of the year, everything should be up and running.
What's your hypothesis? Do you think that will improve the accident data for those intersections?
It's a proven, I guess, track record. There's a track record of protected left turn phasing help with safety at the intersection. Obviously with a caveat of a little bit of additional delay to the through movement, which is usually the main movement. In this case would be Leucadia. When you have protected left turn phasing, the Leucadia throughput will be delayed a little bit more to serve that protected left, but it's proven that protected lefts does provide enhanced safety for intersections.
And I want to thank you because I know we are getting this because your staff wrote a grant, right? This is grant funded. So
That is correct, yes.
kudos to you guys. Thank you again for successfully getting this grant to improve safety and mobility for us.
Thank you, Chair. We are using the West to speak now. You notice that or not? Okay. No matter what, thank you. Okay.
I'm going to need a tutorial on that, so maybe we'll just.
Okay, well, I'm your guinea pig, so I'll beta test, okay? And I guess it sort of works, I have to point out. Okay. So first of all, thank you, Sergeant, for bringing this data to us and presenting to us. It's useful, but I think it could be more useful if you could provide some finer detail about some of these accident citations, such as discrimination as far as night or day, whether there's a bicycle or pedestrian or car involved.
Okay.
And also if it was normalized by traffic volume. So for instance, the intersection between, as you said, Acadia and El Camino, that has a big dot there. But if there's 100,000 cars there, the number of accidents per vehicle or per 10,000 vehicles, whatever, may not
Right.
be that bad compared to another intersection that has only 100 cars, but there's still an accident.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would make it more useful to tell which ones are really more dangerous. So that's kind of what I'm asking, is if you could provide more detail as far as night or day, even weekends, pedestrian, bicycle, car, and normalization by traffic volume.
Okay, perfect. All right,
That'd be great. Thanks very much.
absolutely.
I'd like to follow up with that and just ask the type of citation, if the majority are speeding, and just what type of citations are given. And if you have a general answer for that, that would be great. And just in the high volume, on the Coast Highway, just generally, and is there someone posted there with a gun, or is it just semi-random? I know it wouldn't be random, but semi-random, that you have a motorcycle
Yeah, so
particular area?
it's not I mean, I guess, I suppose semi-random is there's some high-speed areas that we try to have a motor unit at on a regular basis. So when you're looking at 2800 South Coast Highway, for instance, I can safely say that those are all related to speed for the most part, because you can get going southbound and not know that you're hitting 60, maybe 70 miles an hour sometimes on a clear day with not much traffic. So yeah, we have a lot of motors that will sit there and do radar, and they'll pick up those. So the majority of those are going to be speed. The majority of the ones in stretches where there's just long straightaways, those are obviously going to be related to speed. As far as everything else, I'd have to get a different breakdown for you, because there's so many different violations that everyone will write for different reasons. So I don't have that in front of me, but I can request that for next time for you.
Sure. I have a question. Have you ever given a citation for somebody using their cell phone while driving?
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Oh, that's good. And I have another question. Do you know of the law, the 3-foot law that cyclists are granted while cars are moving? And if so, have you given a citation for that?
I can't say that I've ever written that citation. I am aware of that one. I don't know that I'm familiar enough with it to actually cite it. It's one of those difficult ones where you have to know, specifically that they're within 3 feet. So that one tends to be a tricky one to actually
easily
justify.
challenged.
Yeah, exactly. So in an instance like that, a deputy would probably write something that they're more certain of, like
Right.
unsafe speed, for instance, if you're like near a bunch of cyclists or something like that. But yeah, does that answer your question?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Question. Sure. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this information to us this evening. And I echo a lot of the comments that have been made about say further analysis or deeper dive. I do have a question about the enforcement activity along along Rancho Santa Fe Road. Doesn't appear to be much activity going on there. Can you comment on that?
Let's see, North Rancho Santa Fe. Yeah, so it looks like we have one collision back there and then one citation, or 2 citations. I think that's the medium-sized circle. So 2 citations back there for the entire month of March. Yeah, I mean, it looks like there probably could use a little bit more enforcement back there. There's so many stop signs back there. The majority of your tickets are going to be for stop sign violations back there as opposed to speed.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places that we could try and spread speed enforcement around. So I can tag that one onto the list of things to pass on to Sergeant Collis. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I just have one more request. As I listen to my fellow commissioners, it seems that the last few months, and we so appreciate this data, by the way, but the last few months, there's always a lot of questions about what are the citations or what are the types of accidents. And I realize that this is being generated probably using a lot of data. But is there any chance that the data points that are put on here could be put onto like a spreadsheet? It doesn't need to, they don't need to be linked, but if we could just see, a spreadsheet of, there were this many accidents that were, collisions, there were, whatever it is. I know people want to know e-bike, data, and everybody has their own thing they are looking for. If this data could just be aggregated into a spreadsheet, then we could look at it and, I don't know, we like data here, so it would be nice if we if we could have that data in some form.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, we have a lot of DUI-related collisions, e-bike-related collisions, people who are unlicensed. So, that makes sense that would be helpful for you to see that breakdown, because it's not just about speed, or it's not just about whatever the case might be. But yeah, we can try and get that breakdown for you.
Yeah, thank you. We hope that decisions are made by data, and I think that it would be nice for us to see a little bit more. This is a great first look, but having the details would definitely be helpful for all of us.
Great.
Any final comments?
Yes, Chair. I did press the request to speak button, by the way.
It is not showing up on here. We'll have to take care of this later.
Your excuse. Okay, Sergeant, this is kind of follow up to Commissioner Staniford's question about speed enforcement. Now, it also pertains to a action item on our agenda 7A. So the speed data from Quail Gardens Drive shows the median speed in most cases is above the posted speed limit. So how do you choose which roads to enforce speeds on? Because that seems like a candidate for speed enforcement if the median speed, 50% of cars, are above the speed limit.
Is that a speed survey?
It is a speed survey.
Yeah, you don't have to answer that one.
So from what I thought I heard is that how you guys decide where to go, or what, that wasn't the question.
That was, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not a motor cop. I'm not a motorcycle cop. The motorcycle cops, really, their main job is writing tickets. Like that's why they exist. That's what they're paid to do, is to write tickets. They kind of have their own meetings about where they want to do enforcement, and then they do these things called strike teams. Well, they will move around to different locations within the city and within the county sometimes and target specific areas. I don't personally know exactly what their reasoning is behind going to certain locations and why they wouldn't go to other locations on that particular day. I know they do like to spread it around, and we get tons of email requests about suggestions to go. Jeremy Collis also happens to be the new motor sergeant, so he's going to be the guy that we can pass all those requests on to. So it's kind of like a perfect scenario here, because he'll be running both the traffic unit and the motor unit for the entire county. So he's kind of the guy on that one. But I'll bring that up one to him as well.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant. In addition to the various solutions that we have proposed on the agenda, I think speed enforcement is also another factor that will mitigate excessive speeds, which we do know are excessive on that road. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, if there are no further comments, no further comments? Okay, I think we can move to our next one, and I did just want to let the commissioners know, it's not showing up on my screen because I'm registered as vice chair still. So if you push the button, I think it's going to Patricia, maybe. Is it going to you? I don't know who's, anywho, that's not going to work tonight, so just raise your hand. Okay, the next agenda item is, I think 7A, there we go. So 7A is safety and mobility enhancements on Quail Garden Drive. Is there an engineering presentation?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll go over the report and we can go through questions and discuss if there are any questions and concerns after. Thank you. Yes, this is as was mentioned. This is a safety mobility enhancement along Quail Gardens Drive. A little bit of background: in 2021, our 6 housing element was passed by council, and multiple projects were identified. Several of these projects, these development projects, go through the standard process of California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, where they're analyzed, their traffic impact is evaluated. We estimate their trip generation, how it's distributed, how they impact different areas of town. We have these significant impact thresholds where if a development project has an impact beyond those significant impacts, they would have to mitigate their impact. There is a clear process. It's not really at our discretion. It's a council-approved process, and most of the cities in the county process development projects the same way. There are some sites that are exempt from CEQA due to various housing situations, again, beyond our traffic engineering division's authority to mandate certain evaluations or ask for certain considerations or mitigations because of their, let's say, density bonus or their location or the type of additional low-income housing that they're providing. There are various reasons or situations that a project might be exempt from CEQA. With those, we have a lower level, smaller level traffic impact analysis requirement, and there are certain things that we can ask the development to provide the city with those improvements. Because of that reason, the fact that several projects in the city were considered by right, as mentioned, they were considered not totally exempt from evaluations, but limited evaluations were conducted. The city council directed the staff last October to come up with a solution for the whole city with all these development projects that are happening, identify potential impacts of all these projects cumulatively, and find out the areas most impacted by these development sites and identify potential improvements associated with these projects. And in February, we proposed a scope of work and a consultant to the city council, and they approved that, and the consultant is starting work this month. With that said, because of the fact that during the council meeting, the 2 meetings that this was discussed, there was a lot of concerns with regards to Quail Gardens Drive and Saxony, and I think it was at that point council member initiated item. Mayor Krantz was the person who initiated this whole idea of evaluating citywide impacts of these development projects. I'm not sure, remember if he was at that point mayor or council member, but it was a council member initiated item. Because of the fact that at that point, Quail and Saxony were kind of the spearhead of this whole idea of we need to find out potential solutions for different areas of town, staff started with Quail as, while that other study is going forward, we decided, because the way that scope of work for that project is established, there will be a citywide analysis, different projects identified, prioritized, will come to council. Council will finalize their prioritization, and then they will go for full design, and then comes how we fund those projects. So we're looking at I would say a good year, 2-year, maybe even 3-year process, depending on finalizing that study, finalization of design, and funding and construction. With this, because of the fact that every year we have a small quick build budget for the city where we identify potential low-hanging fruit type quick improvement, quick build projects, we took on Quail Gardens and Saxony. We started with Quail. Saxony is going to be next to identify potential traffic calming, traffic management measures to help with these future development projects that are coming, to implement some quick measures to enhance safety and mobility. These are most of the sites that are being developed around town, and with the number of units they're building. These numbers, I mean, some of them have changed a little bit, but they give you a good idea of what's happening around town. This is a study area on Quail between Leucadia Boulevard and Encinitas Boulevard. As was discussed earlier, Quail Garden and Leucadia will get an improved signal in the next few months with a protected left turn for Quail. So we collected a lot of data. We have we have 4 speed radar feedback signs, one double-sided at one location and 2 others separate. And these speed radar feedback signs do collect continuous data where they collect the number of vehicles passing at different periods of time, the speed of those vehicles, and they generate reports. We can download those reports and analyze them. We also did install another data collection camera by Quail Gardens Court or Quail Gardens Lane, somewhere around here. I think it's Quail Gardens Lane here. And that data was also added to the report. So these 4 charts, I guess, semi-charts that we see here shows about 170,000 points. Each point is a vehicle that crossed going northbound at Via Zamia between February 18th to April 3rd. And the data was analyzed, and you can see here what the posted speed is. The average speed is 37. The 85th percentile, which mostly matters to us, is 42. And the average daily volume was around 4,000, and this is in one direction going northbound. That's the volume of traffic in one direction. Similarly, it should be noted, I guess, for clarification, the system has some misdetections, especially for lower speeds when there is like a fly or spider web or something in front of the camera. It does make a lot of mistakes for 2 miles per hour, 3 miles per hour, 5 miles per hour. So the system statistically, to kind of clarify this error, as you can see, stops 4 times the standard deviation from average. In this case, it's about 25 when we calculated it. So when the average is 37, it stops at 13. It doesn't record anything less than 13 miles an hour. And that might not matter that much because these are lower speed. If a vehicle is going 15 and we didn't detect them, maybe it's not that important. But 24 miles above the average, which in this case 24 around 25 would be like 62 miles an hour, the system would cut those dots also off. And to make sure it's not a very big number, I did check into the raw data, and the number of those were less than 100 for the 2-3 locations I checked. It's not a very huge number. I mean, it's still, 80, 90 vehicles going above 62, 63 miles an hour in a 45-day, I guess, period, an average 2 a day. It's not a small number. But I also did check the time period, the timestamp for those detections. More than half, about 2/3 of those were during midnight times, like about midnight or 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., which is, again, it's not that good that we have those speeds, but it kind of shows that we don't have 65, 70 miles an hour, hundreds of those every week or every month. Similar data for southbound Via Zamia. We have 85th again at 42. This direction southbound was 157,000, Our average daily was about 2,800. So kind of shows that northbound in this area has a higher volume compared to southbound. It's approximately 4 to 3. The total volume daily traffic in this area, it's about 7,000 average daily traffic for the volume of cars that use Quail Gardens Drive. At Quail Gardens Court northbound, 85th was 39 mile. Speed is a little lower here. Average daily is 4,500 vehicles. About 180,000 vehicles were detected. Southbound at Christian Court, closer to the Encinitas Boulevard signal. Again, 180,000, volume is 4,600. 85th percentile is again 42. 85th can get a little higher here because of the fact that sometimes vehicles see the green light at the intersection and try to speed up to make it to the green. This location should be noted that with the development projects going on the east side of Quail Gardens Drive, we'll be getting a traffic signal as a condition of a development project. We analyzed multiple intersections along the corridor, Paseo de las Flores, Via Zemilla, Quail Gardens Lane, Equi Ranch, entrance to the Botanic Garden, Paseo de las Verdes, Quail Gardens Court, Christian Court. So all these intersections, we analyzed them, evaluated the data that we had, checked the site distance, tried to identify what potential safety and mobility improvements we can implement. Now, that being said, our thought were to identify quick build solution. Now, there might be a lot of stuff that can happen here due to budget constraint, due to the fact that this was supposed to be a quick build project. Our evaluation was based on short-term solution and the improvements that can be implemented pretty quickly. Paseo de las Flores evaluations showed there's no real serious side distance issue. There was only 2 collisions in the past 20 years, 21 years that we have data at that location. That being said, the number of collisions at this location and the rest of the intersections that we have on the report comes from the Sweeters data, as our deputy mentioned earlier. These only get recorded if there is a sheriff's report on them. So the number of collision might be more. So we might have residents who would say, hey, I live in this area, and we've had just 2 collisions last year. But our data is only based on the state records where there is an actual collision report entered into the system. At Via Zemilla, we have a 43 mile per hour, 85th percentile. We installed a specific camera just for this location. We didn't use our radars. We also used our own camera. And there has been 9 collisions on record. Upon evaluation, we noticed that because of the 2 curves, if I go back into the aerial, you can see this is Via Zemilla. There is a curvature on the road that kind of limits. Via Zemilla is kind of at the center of the curvature, limits the side distance on both sides getting out of the Channel Islands Drive and Via Zemilla. California MUTCD does allow implementation of a stop sign where the side street cannot make a easy, comfortable, safe turn movement unless the major street comes to a stop. And this location, this upper picture shows looking north, coming out of Via Zemilla, and this one is Channel Islands Drive looking north. As you can see, because of the curvature on the road, turning left, turning right might be a little easier. Turning left certainly is not as easy. Similarly, Via Zemilla looking south also has a limited side distance. Because of that, we think it's warranted to consider a stop sign at this intersection. At Quail Gardens Lane, similarly, we didn't have warrants for implementation of all-way stop control. There were 3 collisions in the past 20 years. At Equi Ranch Road, due to the high volume, being the entrance to the Botanic Garden, and being the relatively larger footprint intersection, and also the fact that it's kind of in the middle of the corridor, kind of halfway between Encinitas Boulevard and Lucadia, we thought it's a good location to implement a quick-built mini roundabout, help with the crossings at this location, help with the turning movements in and out of the Botanic Garden. The fact that we probably have thousands of left turns into the site and out of the site, a circle can help that horizontal deflection, calm the traffic, and also create that convenience for those left ins and left outs. Simple, quick build. This is not a major roundabout. We've done a similar project in Euless, cost the city somewhere around 10-15K. So it's certainly something we can do with our current budget in the next year. Paseo de las Verdes, similarly, side distance was proper, a straight shot. There were 4 collisions at this location. The volume warrants were not met at this location either. We didn't have the needed volume for the side street to justify the stop sign. And Christian Court, as mentioned, we did have some speeding issues there because of the proximity to the traffic signal at Encinitas Boulevard, but the fact that a traffic signal will be built at this location by the development, we didn't recommend anything here. We also evaluated for potentially implementing some speed tables and can work as a raised crosswalk, but the fact that the majority of the corridor on the west side, I guess the southern half of the corridor on the west side, we don't have a receiving sidewalk. These will more act as a speed table. We do have this guideline, this code that our fire department has to approve our traffic calming devices, especially our speed cushion and speed table, because of their impact on our emergency response time. Because of the fact that these were not final locations, we haven't heard from the residents and from the commission, our fire department has not yet reviewed these. They have concerns usually at our classified roads where a road is serving not just the residents, but our fire trucks to get to different locations of town. This is a classified road of the city. This is not a residential road. So it's supposed to serve all of our residents, not just the residents of this roadway. But they have not seen this design yet, and not design, but the proposal yet. We have scheduled a meeting with some of our residents in the area and our fire department. We will meet and discuss this proposal and the input that we're getting from the commission tonight. So this kind of shows a summary of what we went after. This is where we are right now. Again, nothing is final, nothing is completely designed, not funded. This at this point is just a scope of some low-hanging fruit type improvement, safety mobility projects that we can implement, waiting for that complete study to happen and finalize. With that, I'm open to questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation tonight. That was very informative. I was wondering if we have any public speakers on this item.
We do, yes.
Okay. I think we'll take public speakers next, and then questions?
Okay, sounds good. Our first speaker is Marianne Penton, followed by Randy Peterson.
How do you do this? Okay, there we go. Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do. We need you. This community needs you really bad. Okay, the strategic plan for Encinitas includes quality transportation, provide effective, safe, and easy transportation for all modes of movement and for all demographics. I really applaud the concept of mobility planning now in advance of the development to correct current flaws and to make things right so when the development comes, we don't get slammed. There were nice pictures of the Quail Garden Road, nice curving road, nice sidewalks. I really like that image. It's very nice. But in Northwest Acadia, Vulcan does not have winding streets, and nor do we have sidewalks, and we don't even have a dirt path for safe mobility. So though we're planning wonderfully for the future, we're not doing anything in our corridor. And it's very frustrating to hear about the efforts and the money being allocated for other parts of the town, which already have sidewalks, when we have nothing. So it's very, very frustrating for me. High density between La Costa and Leucadia Boulevard, Vulcan Avenue already has high density with our apartments. And if you count multiple workers and their families in living in single apartments, it's a low income. So we're affecting profoundly low-income housing and people who can't afford to even get to the bus because there's no way to get to a public transportation off of Vulcan Boulevard. I'm not sticking to my text, and I apologize. I get very emotional about what I'm doing, and I should stick to my text. I'll try my best. Of course, people die when they're crossing the railroad tracks to try to get to the buses or to try to get to where they want to go. But I guarantee you, if we had a bike path, if we had a walking path along Vulcan Boulevard, Vulcan Avenue, people would be so much more happy and they would go to alternate types of transportation. I hate to take my car to go across the railroad tracks, but I have to because it's not safe. There's no other way to go. So I'm going to deviate from this, and I'm going to ask, how can we ask the city council to allocate money to move the parking concrete blocks over and provide a what do they call those, backhoe, to provide a walking path, a temporary path, so we can at least have a place to walk. The women can walk their strollers to the park and people can walk. How do we go about requesting that to happen? Do we have to go to city council? Do we go to you first? If you could tell us how to do this, I'd really appreciate it. So I'm going to ditch my last thing, and if you guys could let me know how we can take action in our corridor where there's nothing happening and where they're planning for the future. I'd like to see what we can do to try to improve it for our community without spending a lot of money. So thank you for your advice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Okay.
Next,
Next, we have Randy Peterson, followed by Diana Nunez.
Good evening. My name is Randy Peterson. I live on High Meadows Avenue, and I have been a resident of Encinitas since its founding. I'm here because I'm tired of seeing people who already have wonderful improvements seeking and receiving more, while people who live with serious life safety issues on their streets are continually overlooked. I'm certain there are many issues citywide that I'm not aware of, but I'm going to focus on what I know. I know Quail Gardens Drive is one of the nicest drives in all of Encinitas. And while it has no visible signs of needing repair, over half of it is rated on the city's road condition map as poor to very poor or failed condition. I know it is a suburban collector street with no homes fronting it, and residents access it via their gated entry drive or nice feeder roads. I know it has minimal pedestrian traffic, but it has walking paths separated from the flow of traffic by a strip of landscaping on both sides, as well as separate designated bike lanes. I know it has a landscape center median with left turn pullout lanes. I know a roundabout being requested to slow traffic is currently located or proposed or looking at being located at the entrance of San Diego Botanical Gardens. Given all that, let's compare Quail Gardens to Vulcan Avenue and its neighboring streets. I know Vulcan Avenue has residences lining almost the entire distance from Leucadia Boulevard to La Costa Ave, with perpendicular parking necessitating residents back into traffic flow. I know that except for one small section, it has no sidewalk, which means when the residents walk their children to and from school, they must do so in the city street. I know it lacks basic drainage and infrastructure, resulting in one of the worst conditions of flooding in the city. I know even though potholes and crumbling asphalt exist along its entire length, it's rated better than Quail Gardens on the road condition map. I know a roundabout at Hygeia and Leucadia Boulevard was approved 2 decades ago, yet remains unfunded. I know there are skid marks over 120 feet long at the end of High Meadows that terminates at the front of a neighbor's Volvo that is probably 3 feet shorter now than it was just days ago. Yet our requests for traffic calming in our neighborhood are ignored. Worst of all, I know that even though the current and former mayors and city council members in this committee are aware of all these issues on Vulcan, this city continues to redline the people in that area. So here we are, knowing that Quail Gardens Drive doesn't meet the statistical requirements for traffic calming measures, and knowing there is a study being conducted right now that will address traffic calming measures for Quail Gardens Drive and other roads, yet this group has received preferential treatment by being placed onto tonight's agenda with a staff report. I close by encouraging you to recognize this for what it is, a group of people who have more than most, who are well connected to major players within the city, standing in front of you with pockets full from what they already have with outstretched hands asking for more, and you know there are people who have serious life safety needs. You know they exist, but they just don't have the financial resources to be heard. You must decide if the want before you now is more important than the needs of people for basic safety. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next,
Quick, sorry.
Okay.
next we have Diana
Sorry,
Nunes.
I think we just have a quick question here
Oh,
from
sure.
the commissioner.
Abe, is there some data on that road condition analysis that he just mentioned? Is there some sort of data that we can get a hold of that will tell us the quality of the road?
Oh, absolutely. It's called Pavement Condition Index, a PCI number. I don't have it handy right now. Obviously, this is not on the agenda. It's not a relevant conversation to the agenda.
I understand, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Diana Nunes, followed by Stephen Gherkin.
Hi, Diana Nunes from Leucadia. On February 15th this year, our City Council directed staff to hire a consultant to evaluate the potential impacts of the planned high-density development projects in our city and to identify alternatives to enhance and improve safety and mobility in their vicinity. Like other north, south, and south corollaries in the city, Quail Gardens will be impacted by this new housing growth. For staff to make any recommendation regarding Quail Gardens mobility improvements, specifically without the findings of this study, is premature. Mobility solutions cannot and should not be evaluated in a vacuum. In fact, even prior to the adoption of the housing element, several years ago, the Traffic and Safety Commission had questions regarding the collateral effects of the mobility measures proposed and suggested by the E3-sponsored traffic calming plan for Quail Gardens and Saxony Road. The measures proposed were similar to the ones listed today. At that time, it was strongly suggested by the Traffic Commission that possible traffic diversion impacts on other roads in the city as a result of the implementation of these traffic calming measures must be evaluated. Commissioner Cole was specifically concerned about how these actions could divert traffic to other north-south roads. Also during this discussion, questions were posed whether lowering the speed of a local augmented road, which functions as a collector, could open the city to potential liability and litigation. Have these questions been effectively addressed and answered with the current proposed traffic calming solutions? How could they be without the data from the cumulative impact study that the city is now conducting? Moving any traffic load to other north-south corollaries, such as the residentially dense north-south connector of Vulcan, which is in very poor condition, would be absolutely unacceptable. These questions should be answered prior to moving this forward. Visiting Quail Gardens yesterday, I was impressed by the existing pedestrian and bike infrastructure, the multiple speed feedback signs, and the well-maintained condition of the roads. The lack of street-facing residential units was also noted. Diverting staff's attention and time to Quail Gardens' requests for lower speeds while there are roads in significantly worse condition that completely lack safe pedestrian and bike infrastructure seems unreasonable, especially as discussions and prioritization of very limited CIP funding is occurring, and especially in the atmosphere of very limited quick build funds. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay. Next, we have Stephen Gherkin, followed by Brian Blair.
I'm going to take my driving license away now. Hello, Commissioners and Chair. My name is Steve Gherkin, an Encinitas resident. Quail Garden is my location where I live. We've heard lots of great comments tonight, and I think they all bear hearing and merit by your discussion. Tonight I'm to discuss what's before you, which is improvements to the Quail Gardens corridor. And I'm very grateful that Mr. Bannigan, the traffic engineer, has conducted a recent safety and traffic study. And because the question that we want to ask is, is Quail Gardens Drive unsafe? The standards heavily weigh accidents. Unfortunately, somebody has to get hurt or killed before it's unsafe by those standards. Too bad if that person was you. The standard fosters positive or reactive procedures, not proactive planning. So I'd like the Commission to consider common sense safety in their planning safety improvements. And as Engineer Abe pointed out, some of the key safety data from the speed feedback signs is eliminated from the information that's provided to you. In my email to council, I gave you the raw data so you can cut it any way you want. Look at it for all the speed feedback signs. But only in the picture, a full picture of this, can you see how unsafe Quail is. So here's my cut of the data. Did you know that 21,760 cars exceeded the 85th percentile of speed on Quail in that time period? Do you know that there's a maximum of 85 miles per hour at Kristen Court and Quail Gardens at 6:30 in the morning? There's hundreds, if not thousands of cars speeding like this at every single camera there that you'll see. So it's not just the time of day, it's happening all day, all the time. And this is supported by all the data. So that's not a safe road to be walking next to cars going 25, 35, 45 miles an hour above what's considered a speed limit. I don't care whether you've got a sidewalk there or not. It's definitely not safe to be on the road to be biking. So that's a reason why Quail Gardens is unsafe for everybody that's driving, walking, or biking. The standards don't consider if people feel safe. I've lived for over 20 years next to the Botanic Gardens. I've walked there once. I would never take my child on that street. I take them and I drive the 100 yards. Why? Because it's not safe to do it otherwise. I support the recommendations of Engineer Abe to install the stop sign at Via Zamia, the mini traffic circle at Eggy Ranch Road, and a speed table at Quail Park, maybe just up there a little bit where the sidewalk ends and it doesn't cross Quail Gardens Drive. That might be a really logical place to put it in. And then lastly, install a stop sign at Kristen Court. We need cars to stop now. We need cars, we don't need to wait 4 to 5 years if a subdivision gets approved and if the stop signal gets made. We need cars to stop now. You should see that there's cars that come up there and drift. They go, I mean, you can go out there and just see it for yourself. But the speed data shows cars are flying at freeway speeds down that road and we're walking right next to it. So that's my information as to why I think Quail Gardens Drive is unsafe. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you now.
Thank you for sharing your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up is Brian Blair, followed by Jillian Pillsbury.
Is it the left clicker that moves it forward? Okay, I'll try. I'll go like this if it doesn't work. I appreciate the work and effort that's gone into the study of Quail Gardens Drive and the effort to make it safe for residents, particularly those kids who reside in the area, ride in the bike lane, attend the farm lab, botanic garden. I also hope this neighborhood that's being referenced back here is addressed. There's obviously a lot that can be done, and I'm glad to see people who are here voicing their concerns about their neighborhood.
Quail Gardens is unsafe for everybody. What's being lost in the study is that on either side of the road, you have the Botanic Garden on one side, you have a school on the other side, you have hiking trails on one side, and people are constantly trying to go back and forth, and there's only one crosswalk, and it is legitimately scary because you have cars, as you now know from the data, that are going 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. I had a police officer I saw pulled somebody over the other day who had been going 50, and she said that in spite of having her lights on, cars continue to fly by her 50 plus miles an hour. She said Quail Gardens Drive is dangerous. This was just very recently. So I want to focus on a couple of things because I largely agree with the study that's been done, but there's a couple of things that I think are worth pointing out that are a little different. Mr. Gherkin mentioned one of them. There needs to be a stop sign at Kristen Court now. And the reason for that is because cars coming southbound, the morning commuter does not care about safety and is going 50, 60 miles an hour. And when they hit that blind turn, it's a total line of sight issue. They pick up even more speed, even if they're not trying to. And so trying to come out of Quail Point Lane requires video game-like reflexes because you're looking in both directions at cars that are going faster than you see them going on Leucadia or Encinitas Boulevard, because you actually have stoplights on those roads. You don't have anything on Quail Gardens Drive. There's nothing to slow a car down. It's insane. One thing I would highlight here, this is actually somewhat lines up with what the traffic engineer suggested, but my simple logic is, if the speed limit is already at too fast 35 miles an hour, I think the city should consider erring on the side of putting in quick build stop signs that are hundreds of dollars to employ and are effective. And if the city wants to spend a little more, they can spend whatever, $5,000, whatever it is, to put in speed tables that can double as crosswalks so people can go across. I want to emphasize the need to put in stop signs. They're inexpensive, they're effective, and they're immediate, and they're quick build. And if the long-term plans determine that, hey, maybe something else is warranted, like a roundabout or something else, then fine, we can look at that. But this is a way to address safety now, affordably, and easily, and effectively. What I do here is I look, so that this round circle here shows these parts of Encinitas Ranch that have one way to get out. So you have like 1,000 residents, and then they can't even make a left turn out of their neighborhood because you've got cars going 50 plus 60 miles an hour in both directions. And I think about my 16-year-old daughter having to make a left turn just to get to the high school. And I warn her, Brooke, be so careful. Please be careful. Take a right turn if you can. Dad, no, it's faster to go left. I don't want her to go left. My 14-year-old son, he will get in trouble with me if he rides his bike on Quail Gardens Drive. Because yes, there is a bike lane, and yes, it's beautiful, but it's dangerous. It's narrow. It's a narrow road with a narrow little bike lane. If cars are going 25, 30 miles an hour, I would say take it. I don't take it. I say you ride up on that dirt, because it's not a contiguous sidewalk. There is a sidewalk in pieces, but it's not contiguous. One last thing I just want to say here is a stoplight is not going to solve the problem at Kristen Court, because a light, when it's green, will allow cars to continue through speed all the way through and going down that hill, and it'll be dangerous. They want to put 485 units right there across from Kristen. A stop sign stops everybody and allows everybody to get in and out of each of those neighborhoods, whatever they build there, however long it takes. Stop sign is an effective and inexpensive way for that to actually work. That should not be a light. It should be a stop sign. That's all I have. Thank you for your time and your consideration. I really appreciate all of the work that all of you do on behalf of the city and residents and my family.
Thank you for your comments tonight.
Next, we have Jillian Pillsbury, followed by Ari Novi.
Hi, I appreciate everything you guys have just shared about what you need on Quail Gardens Road, but I just feel that our area in Encinitas and Leucadia needs to be addressed first, and we're sorely lacking safe mobility. We don't have sidewalks. Between Vulcan Avenue, Encinitas Boulevard, and La Costa Avenue, between Vulcan Avenue, between Encinitas Boulevard and La Costa Avenue, we don't have sidewalks, safe bike lanes throughout this stretch of very busy residential road. We have houses lined, apartments lined, driveways up and down that entire road. And as the previous person spoke from our side, our neighborhood, they can't back out of their driveway safely. Quail Gardens is not residential. It has one of the newest, most pedestrian, bike, and car-friendly north-south connectors for Leucadia, east of the 101. It's a divided road. It has left turn lanes, class 2 bike lanes, and sidewalks the entire length. Saxony Road is another problem area that needs to be addressed before any more money is allocated to other areas of our community. We're just asking fair and equitable distribution of funds to all areas of town, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Our final speaker is Ari Novi.
Good evening. My name is Ari Novi. I'm the president and CEO of San Diego Botanic Garden, also chair of the Environmental Commission, so it's wonderful to be here in front of a commission. And I live in the neighborhood and have kids impacted by safety. I'm here primarily to represent the E3 cluster, or district, as we're calling ourselves now. There's two of us here today, but what I'll read is something that was put into the public record from our group regarding this agenda 7A for today's meeting. The E3 Collaborative appreciates the special report and analysis of traffic issues on Quail Gardens Drive. We really applaud the work of the commission, Abe, and the other staff members who have been helping us understand what the options are and bring some light to the issues here. We very much strongly support a quick build roundabout at the intersection of Quail Gardens Drive and Echi Ranch Road. We also appreciate other efforts to reduce the speed along this corridor and would support whatever traffic calming strategies are deemed most appropriate, considering public safety, climate impacts, and efficiency. I also want to say that we certainly respect other neighborhoods' issues in their own neighborhoods, and we very, very, very much recognize that an impact on one place is an impact on other places as well. In particular, we note that our district includes Saxony Road. The speaker before me just mentioned Saxony, and we would encourage the commission and staff to consider traffic calming on Saxony in conjunction with any efforts on Quail Gardens Drive. I also want to mention that there's a unique situation here, with the members of the E3 cluster. Most of us are nonprofits or public agencies, or nonprofits operating on the land of public agencies, and we have really had the luxury of working with city staff and many of you to express not only are we for a lot of these initiatives that are coming out of this analysis and other analyses coming forward, but that we are in a unique position to also be able to say where more land is needed to really create the best possible infrastructure. We are all partners that are willing to support that. I can speak, of course, for the Botanic Garden here. We have already begun informal conversations with city staff and others to, find a way to increase the right-of-way so that potential sidewalks can go inside of the existing mature trees and solve some of the problems that result in the limitations of the road because none of us want to remove the trees. Also, if ever down the road there is, and we very much hope there will be an ability to think about a permanent traffic circle at Quail Gardens Drive and Echi Ranch Road, we also believe it would be possible to find a way to expand the city's right-of-way there so that larger dimensions of a circle, which I understand would potentially benefit the overall safety and dimensions and geometry of that site. That's something that's also on the table as well. So we're very grateful for these current efforts and for the long-term partnership that we think we can help establish to really come up with the best solutions for safety and security. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
There's no other speakers.
Okay, well, thank you. That was a lot of public comment tonight. I appreciate the community being active and engaged in our agenda item here for the evening. I think we should start with commissioners, and my guess is everybody has comments, and since I can't see who wants to go first, should we just go down the line, or do you guys want to jump in? I'm happy, whatever anybody wants to do. Commissioner Wong, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you. Of course, I have something to say, as everyone does. I guess that's one advantage of being in the seat. So first of all, let me express that I entirely sympathize with the people on Vulcan and Saxony, because those streets definitely need some help for pedestrians and bicycles and also residents. And as a extensive biker, I realize how dangerous those streets are. However, I don't think that's really an option for us as a commission to consider right now. We can't do an either or. Right now, the task, I think, is just to decide yes or no, or approve, disapprove, or make suggestions on this agenda item. And I don't think it's necessarily either or. I'd like to do all of these streets, Vulcan and Saxony and Quail Gardens, but I don't think we can do that, certainly not under quick build. So your streets, yes, they do need a lot of help, but I don't think the quick build funds can really afford as much help as they need. So that may be another agenda item. But you have my empathy entirely. So getting to Quail Gardens Drive, I think our question is whether it needs some improvement. And given the speed charts, I think it definitely does, because the speeds are definitely too high. So just looking at the data from the speed survey, the percentage of cars that were below the speed limit at the 4 intersections measured is only 35% at 1. That means 65% were over the speed limit, and there's 41%. There's one that was actually under, 62%, but the median speed was actually only 34 miles an hour as opposed to 35 mile an hour speed limit. And the fourth one was 39% were under the speed limit. Now, I was taught that speed limit is the maximum speed limit. You're not supposed to go above it. It's not supposed to be the median speed limit. It's supposed to be maximum speed limit. So when you have 65% of the cars going over the speed limit, I think that's something wrong. So as far as the analysis and speed in the staff report, then there's one comment that the volume of traffic does not justify an always stop sign. But I submit that it shouldn't be the volume of traffic that determines whether an always stop sign is necessary. It should be safety and compliance that matters, not the volume of traffic. As far as Kristen Court, there's a proposal for a traffic signal, and I'd suggest that rather than waiting many years, as one of the speakers suggested, can we put a roundabout there? Because that could be done as a quick build, and it'd have immediate effect. Besides, green lights, traffic lights do not really slow traffic. As I think the engineer pointed out, sometimes that causes traffic to speed up because they're trying to make the green light. So they could actually be more dangerous, besides also not being very climate friendly. So I'm all for the proposed raised crossings and RFBs, rectangle rapid flashing beacons. I'm all for the stop signs, proposed stop signs, if not more stop signs than proposed. I'm all for the roundabout, as a speaker suggested, maybe a larger one than just the one the size of Eolis would be more effective, because since not too many traffic turns there, I think some of the high-speed traffic would use it as a challenge for a slalom and not really slow down that much. I think this is actually a good area for housing because it's not far from shopping and entertainment and restaurants, but it's not that safe right now. So if you had new housing there, there wouldn't be that many people walking and biking. They'd be driving just because it's not considered safe. And I think we need to address that. Finally, I want to say that safety decisions should not be based merely on past history of accidents, because people tend not to go places where they feel it's dangerous. So that also reduces the accident level. And so it's not a fair determinant of how dangerous a signal intersection is, a place is, the accident rate. So I'm all for the traffic signal, the suggested improvements, and I would actually vote for more. And as I was discussing with the sergeant, I think that law enforcement may be one of the most effective means of mitigating traffic speeds, because if there's just a traffic officer for 1 or 2% of the mornings, that message gets across. So thank you, Chair. That's all I had right now.
Okay, thank you. Anybody next?
Thank you. First of all, I want to acknowledge all the people that came to speak about Vulcan and Saxony. Thank you. It's two streets that obviously need a lot of attention. As a user of that street as well, I can appreciate the decrepit state that it's in, all the way from Encinitas Boulevard all the way up to La Costa. It does need some attention. Moving on to the issue with Quail Garden, I think the piece of information I heard this evening that was the most alarming was the speed that has been recorded on the street, and actually the high rate of speed with such a high percentage of the vehicles that were recorded in March. And I would reiterate what Commissioner Wong said, and hopefully we can get some more visible law enforcement on that area to indeed send a message or do some convincing about holding the speeds down at the peak traffic times in the morning and in the evening. I would support the roundabout at Ecke. I think that it's a proven way to help slow down traffic and actually environmentally more friendly as well. I'm not so sure about the stoplight. I hear the concerns about stoplights not necessarily reducing speed and actually have the opposite effect of, has been noted, with actually getting people to speed up when it turns yellow. Stop sign may be more effective in that, as one of the speakers pointed out. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Yes. I'm Glenn Johnson, and I live on Kristen Court, so I can speak from personal observations of what's going on. Quail Gardens Drive was built, extended at the time the Encinitas Ranch was subdivided. And the Encinitas Ranch subdivision paid for the improvements to Quail Gardens Drive to support the new traffic that was brought in by this over 1,000 homes, and to support the existing homes. Quail Gardens Drive is also blessed by traffic from out of town or from inland that tends to drive down Leucadia Boulevard and take Quail Gardens Drive as a shortcut to Interstate 5, which is a bit of a problem because we have morning commute peaks and afternoon commute peaks and high school peaks. There are certain times of day when I find it best to sit on my couch rather than driving. And that's just the way the street is right now. I'd favor doing something for doing everything in the plan that's before us, except probably we're limited by funds. Some of the other streets in town were developed under earlier rules where developers did not have to build streets, and they're suffering from this now. I'm sorry for you. Saxony is, and Vulcan and are particularly that way. Anyway, this is a situation we've got. The city does not have currently the funds to do much of anything, and I certainly don't want to wait 5 years until the Baldwin Development Company funds a stoplight at Kristen Court. I'd suggest that we put in whatever we can now in this corridor as stop signs. The idea that they can be upgraded to stoplights or roundabouts as future traffic studies indicate. And I'd also like, I think we've heard that the Traffic Engineering Department is planning to look at Saxony Road, which is kind of a twin to Quail Gardens Drive, and Vulcan also ought to have a study. in order to do much of anything, we're going to have to find funding, which means either getting grants or waiting and waiting and waiting for taxing money. So, in summary, I'd recommend that we go ahead and do whatever we can on a quick build basis, and that probably is stop signs. And then if we can recommend to the city council other things, I'm sure the fire department will have their opinion about roundabouts and speed cushions, but when we can slip those in, let's do that in the future.
I would like to speak, yeah. Thank you, everyone, for presenting their information. And I absolutely can sympathize with Vulcan. Just like Commissioner Wong, I do ride my bike a lot, and I happen to ride on Vulcan this weekend, and it's bad. It has been bad for a very long time. I mean, obviously the road conditions now are even worse because of the rain. But yeah, access needs to be improved greatly. And I heard a common theme by a couple of the speakers, Quail speakers, as well as Vulcan, that the crossing of the road, east to west, is not conducive to pedestrians. Interestingly enough, there's schools on both of those streets, so that needs to be addressed, as well as public transport on the Coast Highway. Obviously, that we need to have access to that. And for the Quail Gardens agenda item this evening, I think the road quality is very good. The bike lane is easily distinguished. You know, I would say, I did ride that, by the way, I did ride that this weekend, just to make sure. But I would say that in terms of how narrow it is, I think for at least single cyclists, not necessarily side by side, is not too bad. Now, if I would want my teenager crossing the road to get to one side or the other, that might be a different issue with the speed. So I think really we're considering the speed of the road and how people access the freeway from Leucadia. It seems like, and we can dig into the data a bit more, but I think a stop sign would help for sure. And that's what, at Kristen, that's what I would, as a quick solve, that's what my recommendation would be. And I don't know in terms of the budget and how we are kind of ignoring Vulcan. It seems like it has to do with the residents that are the newer housing developments that are being built. Really is causing us to look at Quail, and I understand that. But on Quail, I would recommend stop sign as a quick solve. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, June. And thanks for everyone that came out and spoke. You know, I applaud all the organization from the Quail Gardens and, of course, hearing about Vulcan and people speaking on behalf of Saxony. I think not for people in the audience, but for their commission, I'm a little surprised. We're surprised by the speeding. We know there's speeding. We know the speeding is bad. Of course, I have the data over the last 10 years where, Leucadia Boulevard at El Camino, Encinitas Boulevard and Vulcan Avenue is number 2 in the last 10 years. We had a 23-year-old die earlier this year, about 100 yards from there. Leucadia Boulevard in Quail Gardens is a hot spot. Garden View at Leucadia Boulevard and We see the police data. Again, we only have the last 4 months that I have record on. The police aren't policing that area, right? They're policing mostly in Cardiff. So I think what I'm hearing from the public today is a little bit of, there seems to be a discrepancy between what's getting funded, what's getting paid attention to, and really where a lot of the problems are. And I think that's our job as a commission to at least highlight that and talk about that. It's not to say we're not for safety. I think we're absolutely for safety. And again, I applaud everything that Quail Garden said. But I do think it's worth our time to address if there's discrepancies, and if we are actually, putting dollars and putting our time behind where there is real need. Because again, when I look at the citation data versus the collision data, I don't necessarily see that. And I'm really glad to see that there is the left turn lane going in at Quail Gardens, Leucadia Boulevard, because that is a hot spot, and that's something that sounds like it's being addressed, irregardless of what happens here. And so for the the folks at Quail Gardens, I really like that we're doing this. I would actually also recommend you guys push heavily into things like traffic and speed cameras. We have roundabouts on Leucadia Boulevard. The lights get knocked out roughly every other month because a lot of people don't understand roundabouts and they just continue to speed. To really stop things like speeding, much more enforcement is needed. If it's not going to come from the police directly, it could come through traffic and safety and speed cameras. So I think that's a recommended route I would honestly take as well. So I'm all for the of course slowing speeds down and making things safer. But I'm also for what I think is an honest conversation about where is the most needs and are we prioritizing the most dangerous places in our city.
So I would just like to build on what everyone has already said. I certainly support stop signs and a traffic signal at Kristen along Quail Gardens Road. But I know we're not tasked to talk about Vulcan, but I think we need to talk about Vulcan. All you have to do is drive down those two streets to see the difference between them. You have a street that has a raised landscape median, you have, left turn pockets, you have sidewalks on both sides of the street, and you have bike lanes. And what do we have on Vulcan? We don't have very much. And, I know we're tasked with talking about Quail Gardens Drive, but I'd like to go on record that we need to talk about Vulcan as well. You just need to drive down the two streets to see the difference. Thank you.
Thanks for everybody's comments. I have some questions for you, Abe, in regard to the speed data. So if you could pull that up, and could you maybe just explain, number one, the capacity of the road? So you said that the road has 7,000 car travels a day. How does that compare to other streets around town? Is that high volume, low volume? And then how do these speeds compare to other parts of town, percentage-wise?
Well, with regards to volume, the data from the speed radar feedback signs show us we have about 7,000 ADT, again, not the exact number, which for a one-lane in each direction road or a two-lane road, it's called two-lane road in traffic, but sometimes gets confused with two-lane in each direction. This is a two-lane road in traffic world, but one lane in each direction. 7,000 is a very, very good, reasonable number, meaning I don't know what the exact level of service would be, but it's not considered a congested road. In comparison, a road like La Costa has one lane in each direction and carries about 16,000, 15,000, 17,000 different segments of the road. Leucadia has two lanes in each direction. It's carrying 30-some thousand vehicles, which is like about 5 times this much. So volume-wise, it's not carrying a up to its capacity or even close to its capacity. There is a lot of capacity for the road to carry additional volume for that matter. With regards to speeding, it's very tough to compare really a speeding on a roadway to another roadway. Our threshold of concern is usually 7 miles over the speed limit. When we have consistently vehicles that are going more than 7 miles over the speed limit, that's usually a red flag for us. Unfortunately, 3 out of 4 of these locations do check that box where we have more 7 miles per hour or more over the speed limit is our 85th percentile. Yeah, but to really compare it to some other location in town, first, I don't have the data right here, and then it would be, dependent on a lot of different factors.
Do you have other places in town where you're collecting this much data on speed?
Pretty much all of our speed radar feedback signs do have the capacity to collect the same amount of data. We also, whenever we have a speed cushion petition submitted to the city for a location, we go collect the speed data and volume data. That's one of our requirements for different traffic calming purposes. Because, we do collect a lot of speed and volume data for different locations of town.
Okay, good. So that was the speed data. Now, when we look at this road, it's my understanding that the speed limit used to be higher, and it recently was lowered. So it used to be, was it a 40-mile-an-hour zone? Is that correct?
Unfortunately, I didn't check the records, but I do believe it was lowered a few years back, yes, with a speed survey that was conducted.
Yes. Now, can you explain how speed limits are set? Because if I look at this data and we're looking at the 85th percentile can you just explain how
yes.
there is a law that says every 5 years we have to reanalyze speeds on a street and assign speed limits. Is that correct? And can you explain what that is all about? I'm not an expert here, so I would appreciate your input.
Correct. So there are different factors, 5, 7, and 10. Recently, I think the new AB 43 law, Assembly bill, I think changes it to even 15. But the code is very simple with regards to the requirement for the speed survey. If nothing changes on the roadway with regards to the physical character of the road or the development or the volume of the road, no drastic change, our speed surveys remain valid up to 7 years. If there is a striping change, if there is a modification to the roadway, a new intersection control is implemented, a signal, a roundabout, stop sign, something changes along the road, we have to redo the survey to find out what the speed limit will be. With regards to how it's processed, we discussed it multiple times at Commission. I'll go another 3-minute summary. And with the I guess the note that it will change, I'll mention the change, I guess, to clarify even more. So the process is the speed limits right now, again, not saying it's reasonable or logical or it's perfect, but that's the law. And it's not a California, it's a nationwide process with a handful of exceptions, I guess. Some states and cities have changed it. The speed limits are established based on how people drive on a road. We survey usually more than 100, but it's supposed to be even 50 per the guidelines are enough. We usually go 100 or sometimes even 200. You survey the vehicles on the roadway. You sort the speeds that you detected with a calibrated radar. You check their speed in an unmarked vehicle so that they don't change their driving behavior. You check their speed, whatever their speed is, you sort them out. And the 85th percentile, let's say you shoot 100 vehicles of speed with a speed radar gun, and you sort them out. The mark where 85 of those 100 vehicles are driving at that speed or below sets the speed limit. So the legislative body, their idea was if 85% of the vehicle are driving at this speed or lower, that means this is a safe and comfortable and convenient speed, and that's what we want as a speed limit on the road. In other words, I always make this example, which is uncomfortable, but to clarify, if everybody decided to go 60 miles an hour on Quail Gardens Drive, by law, the speed limit would have to change to 60 miles an hour because 85% of the vehicle are deciding to go 60 miles an hour. That's the basic speed law that we have. If we modify it arbitrarily, we're setting a speed trap. Every single ticket will be dismissed at court. That's the current law. Now, what our options are as traffic engineers, one option is when 85th percentile comes at a on-round number, obviously our speed limits are increments of 5. If the speed limits becomes at 42, comes out at 42 or 43 or 44, we are allowed to, there's a relatively sophisticated process, but the simplified version is we are supposed to mathematically round it, and then we can lower it by 5. So if it's 42 miles an hour, it's very different to 43. If the 85th come back at 42, it rounds to 40, and then the traffic engineer is allowed to lower it by 5, and there are factors that have to be present: narrowness of the road, curvature of the road, the number of pedestrians present, collision history, a lot of different factors. Is there a school around? Is there a sidewalk present? Do we have bike lanes? So based on various factors, we're allowed to lower the 80 speed limit by 5 miles, and that's only 5. If it's 43 miles an hour, it rounds to 45, and unfortunately, we cannot change that. Now we can still bring it down by 5, but the speed limit this time becomes 40. We cannot make it 35. So a 42 is different from 43. 42 can go down to 35, but 43 cannot go below 40. So that's the whole process of establishing a speed limit. Then it goes to council. Council approves it, and this document, after it gets my stamp or the city engineer's stamp, is a valid document that our deputies take to court when a ticket is challenged. Whenever there is no backing up speed survey for that speed limit, the ticket is automatically dismissed by the judge. So that's the process. A new law went into effect last year. It's still not operational, not until July of 24. There is a minor change that needs to happen in our judicial system, I think. METCD has changed, but that law, that bill allows us to do an additional 5 mile per hour reduction into the speed limit after doing the first 5 mile on the roads that city council deems safety corridors of the city. So we can establish this map that says these are our safety corridors of the city, and we want to implement that additional 5 mile per hour speed limit reduction option on these, but it's not in effect until July of 24. But that will, so our speed limit will still be done the same way. We have to do radar, shoot vehicle 100 vehicles of speeds, create that diagram, 185th percentile, but then we'll have 2 options of lowering by 5 miles per hour.
And so, do you know when the last speed data was done on this road?
I mean, I've been with the city, I think, 5 years now. So this was, I think, during my time. So I assume this was maybe 3-4 years ago. I can go check the record on this.
Okay.
Maybe I'm mistaken.
But if you used this data right now for all of these different locations, what would the speed limit be set on the road?
Again, it's very tricky. It's 42 right now, but this is not an official speed survey. The fact that it's done by a speed radar feedback sign, it can be interpreted both ways. Some people don't care and drive just whatever they like. Some people kind of slow down when they see these radars. So this 85th might not be as realistic as I being in a unmarked vehicle with a calibrated radar. I might get it different. But if this was my radar data, 42 85th would be 35 speed limit.
Okay, so the data that's collected here is supporting a 35 mile an hour speed limit, right?
Correct.
And so when you look at other roads that have 35 mile an hour speed limits, this is the same kind of data distribution you would also have. Is that correct? Similar.
Again, tough to say. Usually, if I have 7-8 miles over the speed limit, that means there are issues. Usually, a lot of times our hands are tied with regards to our fiscal constraint, our budget, our feasible, improvements that we can implement. Usually, when it's like 7-8 miles over the speed limit, again, the fact that this is 42 in front of a speed radar feedback sign, if I wanted to make a, experience-based guess, if I was in an unmarked car, it would be a little higher than this. Because if we assume 20-30% of people are affected by a speed radar feedback sign, that means this 42 is kind of on a lower side. It could be higher if it's an unmarked radar.
Sure, and there's other stretches of the road where the 85th percentile was more, wasn't it 33? Am I right on that? Or
There was one that was 39. The other 2 locations were like 42 and 43.
Okay.
This one, the 85th, is 42 again.
So
Yeah,
I
this
guess
one's
what
39.
I'm looking at, sorry for interrupting you.
No
I
worries.
didn't. I apologize, Abe. My question is, we are discussing that this speed data is abnormal, but what I'm hearing from you is that other streets with 35 mile an hours, if you put up a speed radar sign and looked at the data, it would be similar. This is similar to other streets in our city. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is
I don't want to mention without having the data, but if I wanted to guess, yes, we do have, because we applied this 5 mile per hour reduction on many of our roads because of the fact that they lack improvements. Vulcan was recently, the speed limit on Vulcan was changed, a very similar case. We rounded it down and then we applied our 5 mile per hour reduction to set the new, I think, 30 mile per hour speed limit on Vulcan, which means the 85th was 37 before that or 36 before that, and now it's 30 mile per hour speed limit. So usually 85th, specifically where a new speed limit sign is installed, at that point it's safe to say the 85th was 6-7 miles over that.
great.
That's a safe assumption.
So it is normal. This is normal data distribution in streets to have this 6-7% over this 85th percentile is what I'm getting at. And I guess why I'm bringing this up is that I feel like this commission is very data-driven and that we are looking at implementing, I think, how much these improvements on this street, and I think that you had mentioned earlier that if we did all of these improvements as they are laid out, it would probably amount to $100,000 in quick build improvements, including everything that's laid out, if we did it all. Is that correct?
Well, again, depends on, because these don't have designs yet. I mean, the circle that we did on Eolus cost us $15,000 just for the circle and a striping that came with it. We didn't have any crosswalks and any concrete ramp work.
Right.
The stop signs obviously are about $2,000 per intersection, $3,000. So those are not very costly. The speed tables, if we do them, are about 10 to 15K each. I guess the tricky part is the mini roundabout, how much of ramp work and crosswalk work we want to do. I would say somewhere between 50 for everything, for the 2 speed tables and all the stop signs. And
the sidewalk, I mean, a sidewalk is very expensive, correct?
I don't think we had a sidewalk here.
Sorry, it is on the plan. It shows it.
Sidewalk?
Well, if,
No, it's
sorry,
a crosswalk.
You're not allowed to speak, but thank you for your, just a little decorum. I'll let Abe pull up
These 2 symbols that I'm showing here.
Sorry, if you look at the roundabout, I apologize. If you
No.
just pull up your design of the roundabout. Yeah, there's the green. Do you see the highlighted green?
The landing pad for the ADA ramp, yes.
Yes, so there is some concrete work and sidewalk and ADA pads. So yes, there is concrete. Anyhow, my point in looking at this speed data, and I appreciate you bringing it in, is that we are looking at making large changes at a cost of $100,000 when this is normal speed data for all roads in our city. This is normal and acceptable speed data for roads. So what does concern me is that at the February 15th City Council meeting, which I was at, and I think a lot of residents here were also at, and I think you guys, Quail Gardens community was also there, is that a consultant was hired to evaluate all of these impacts that are going to result because of the new housing elements. And so what concerns me the most is that if this plan moves forward, number one, the other housing elements and their needs have not been taken into account. But number two, if all of these measures are implemented on Quail Gardens Drive, how is that going to impact the surrounding roads? How is it going to impact Saxony? Is this going to divert more traffic onto Saxony? Is it going to divert more traffic around to neighborhood side streets? So again, I'm just looking at the data, and the data that we have in front of us does not show that the speeding on Quail Gardens is any different than the speeding on any of our other neighborhood roads. So moving ahead to approve a plan when we have not used the resources that we have in front of us, which we have lots of studies and not a single study, the MAP study did not identify Quail Gardens as a need. It actually did put Vulcan as the #1 need in the city. But what I think needs to happen is that we need to evaluate all of the data and then rank the different projects and move ahead equitably for all of the housing plans. So they hired, on February 15th, we have $150,000, Abe just said, to hire a consultant to identify and prioritize mobility and safety projects around these housing element sites, which is, there's 2 on Quail Gardens, and that is why this is here. So these projects will be prioritized, according to this consultant, based on the needs and the state of the infrastructure surrounding each housing element site. I really feel it is premature to be discussing traffic calming measures around a housing element site before the consultant has completed their study. All of the housing element sites deserve to be analyzed, studied, and prioritized before any decisions about improvements can be discussed. Additionally, the data does not support these changes. The speed limit on Quail Gardens was reduced from 40 to 35 and has a very low daily volume of cars of 7,000 cars a day. Abe said it can handle, it's not at its carrying capacity. The accident data also shows that this corridor is extremely safe with less than 1 accident a year, and the speed data collected shows in the 85th percentile, which is consistent with all of our other city streets. The study showed that not a single intersection along this road qualified for an all-way stop due to traffic volume. So the study they did, traffic volume did not say we needed a stop sign. It's not warranted. This stop sign is not warranted. This is how it is handled at all other intersections. If a stop sign isn't warranted, it's not put in, right? Now, there is one intersection that the study showed that could warrant a stop sign, but the exact wording is, it could warrant a stop sign because of sight distance at the intersection is limited for certain maneuvers. So the road curves around, and there is one intersection that warranted a stop sign. That is it with this data. Additionally, Quail Gardens Road, as Abe said, is not a residential road. No homes are located on the road. It is classified as a suburban collector, but it is designed, if you look at the definition on the city's website, it says it is designed to provide mobility in, out, and through destinations and neighborhoods. Furthermore, it is the newest, most pedestrian and bike-friendly northwest-south corridor in this entire neighborhood. It has, as everybody has already pointed out, it has Class 2 bike lanes, it has sidewalks on one side completely, the other side partially. I run this neighborhood all the time. I am regularly the only person running along the sidewalks. I cross back and forth at the intersections. I do not see any other neighbors, rarely down using even that stretch. So, but it is very safe, and never once have I ever had to feel threatened for my life in this corridor. Additionally, like I said, I drive it and I run it regularly. Now, if we are all saying our inputs on how we feel, I personally feel really safe when I'm in this corridor. Maybe it's because I also am in other corridors that I feel are less safe. But again, I don't want to put my personal opinion here. What I am trying to share is the data, and the data shows us that this is not any different than any other street with the similar speed limits. They would expect to have the same speed data distribution. So yes, maybe seeing the 60-mile-an-hour cars on that street, I understand they happen, but they happen on all the other streets as well. Additionally, as these cars are traveling on this street, they also are on a street that people aren't walking on. There are a dedicated Class 2 bike lane, and so I just feel like it is, so again, here's my feeling. I don't want to put it in there. I do feel like it is a very safe street, but the data supports that this is not unusual for any other streets. So I am concerned that this project has jumped ahead of all of the other projects that are in line for this $150,000 consultant to analyze. And again, I'm not saying that this consultant won't warrant all of these. Maybe they are all warranted, and that's what the consultant will say. But what I'm asking is that we do not support this because we need to wait and see what the consultant has to say and let that data come back and then prioritize these projects so that every project around the neighborhood has an equitable distribution of these different traffic calming devices, measures, implementations. So that's me looking at the data. That's how I feel. Moving forward, I do not support implementing any of these traffic calming measures tonight. But this is just, as I looked at the agenda, we are just making recommendations. So how do we do this, Abe? And before I move ahead, I will let my other commissioners comment because I now have been speaking for 5 minutes or so, probably longer. So would anybody else like to jump back in?
Absolutely, we need the full data report. And if the consultant is not finished or needs to provide more information, we need that as well. And if there's any conflict in the data, whether it's speed data, traffic volume, which I think you do have, but you know, I think we need to consider that as well. And yeah, I support that we need to get all of the information in front of us before we recommend any calming at all. Yeah, I think that's fair. And then it's a smooth road on Quail Gardens, and Vulcan is awful. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You know, and when I'm riding my bike on Vulcan versus Quail Garden, there's, you know, a big difference. You know, no doubt there's a bike lane, and you know, on Quail Gardens. But I think the data really needs to speak for itself. And if we can get more data, a complete data report, that'll be helpful.
Yeah. Yes. So just to clarify, the consultant was hired, or the approval to hire the consultant was in February. The consultant, if I read it correctly, is going to be evaluating safety and mobility around, I think it's 13 housing element sites, right? So they are all over the town, not just Vulcan, not just Encinitas, you know, it's all parts. It's Cardiff, I think, Leeuwenhoek. It's evaluate traffic and mobility around all of them, and then come back with a list of issues and criteria that the sites will be ranked according to need and equity. And I think one of our speakers did mention that how small the budget is right now. And that is a big concern of mine as well. The budget this year for our CIP is very, very small. And I think it is also very small for these quick build projects. So again, I feel that maybe the reason so many neighbors have come out to speak tonight is that there is a limited quick build budget. And if $100,000 of it is going to this quick build project, is that equitable? I'm not saying that it might not be ranked number one when this consultant comes back, but my only request is that we wait to make decisions when we get the data. This should be equitable. And this was voiced at the city council meeting on February 15th, and all of the council members actually agreed and said that they would look at the data and then make a decision. And so I, again, was surprised to see this on our agenda. And I realize, and I do want to thank you, Abe. I know you spent a lot of time looking and coming up with ideas, and these are fabulous. Maybe they will be used by this consultant. And I know that your staff spent a lot of time. And again, I always appreciate how you try to come up with ways to calm traffic, because it is a concern for all of us. But again, the equity in how these decisions get made is really important to me, and I feel that they need to be made based on data. And I am not seeing that here tonight. So again, I wanted to clear that up too about how many housing element sites were going to be looked at. And it wasn't just in one part of town.
Excuse me, Chair, could I make a comment? Thank you. With all due respect, I don't know whether you can contend that all streets with a 35 mile per hour speed limit have the same speed profile as this one without seeing specific data for other streets. For instance, I think North Coast Highway 101 has a 35 mile per hour speed limit, but I don't see cars going 60 miles an hour on there. Same with Vulcan, a 30 mile an hour speed limit. I don't think you'll find cars going with these speed profiles minus 5 miles an hour. So I think it's kind of a stretch to say that all streets with a 35 mile per hour speed limit have this speed profile. We do have the data for this street, and we do see that they are kind of dangerous. The speeds are high. Median speeds are above the posted speed limit, which I think is too fast. Maybe this road is too good in the sense that it encourages going too fast. And Vulcan, the road is not so good, so perhaps what we need to do is disimprove the road and install, as I was talking with my colleague, put in cobblestones, and that's a very effective way of
Yes,
decreasing speeds.
I do agree. I don't mean to jump in here, but I just did want to clarify too. You do need to also compare apples to apples. So like Vulcan is a residential road. So when I said that the speed profile would be the same, I mean similar types of roads, right? So again, I think they are classified as different types of roads. If you looked at the speed profile on a similarly classified road with this same speed limit, it would have the same profile, was my point. That's all.
Understand. But I just, from the data that we are presented with right now, I believe the speeds are excessive and they should be slowed down. And that is really my interpretation of what the agenda item is. Yes or no, approve or not approve of this item. Is not to make a priority ranking of all the streets in Encinitas. Is not to choose A or B or anything like that. Is yes or no on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. I hear you, but I think that you can't make these decisions blindly. So we can't go ahead and say that you can't make these decisions without data. And so I still, according to our traffic engineer, this data is typical for this road with this 85 percentile is typical data. Again, I'm just saying that this agenda item is here because speeds, they want traffic calming, but this is a typical speed profile. So that's, and I am not comfortable making this decision and suggesting all of these improvements tonight. So I guess what we can do is I can put a motion on the floor and we can see how this works. So, I mean, I'm happy to put a motion. Did anybody else want to put a motion?
Let me just clarify. So you are contending that all similar roads, collector roads with no residential streets, houses with a 35 mile an hour speed limit have a similar profile to this. That is your contention.
That was my understanding from our traffic engineer. So I'm deferring to data from our traffic engineer. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just want to clarify.
All right. Commissioner Johnson here. I'd like to see a similar report on Saxony and Vulcan, just to see what can be done for those streets. I do believe that Quail Gardens Drive is overtaxed right now and needs some attention right now, but things like waiting for a stop sign or a stoplight for 5 years is not a good idea. So I'd like to ask if we can get the traffic engineer to provide a similar study for the other streets that have been mentioned tonight.
I think that they will. That's what the $150,000 study is going to do. It's going to look at all of these housing element sites, bring back the data, and then a thoughtful, equitable, data-driven decision can be made. That's my understanding as to that's why that consultant was hired to.
That consultant was hired to solve a different problem than the one we're looking at tonight, however. Quail Gardens Drive is one of the streets that is most severely impacted by the housing element. And even though it has not been built, it's also severely impacted at the current time by high-speed traffic, mostly commuter traffic. And that means that it's not a safe street. I would not ride a bicycle. You're never going to catch me on a bicycle anywhere in Encinitas. That's a promise. And as we look at the impact of the housing element, certainly it's going to complicate traffic on Encinitas Boulevard and Leucadia Boulevard and some other streets. But right now, we're looking just at the north-south route on Quail Gardens Drive.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners?
Well, yeah, I have a question. So why was Quail Gardens Drive put at the highest priority? Why did this end up being the street that was going to be evaluated first by this consultant?
I guess 2 or 3 reasons. One was that, first of all, this is not the consultant work. What we're looking at tonight is only staff's work. This was just done by the traffic division. Quail Garden and Saxony, traffic calming on these, one was on our 22-23's work plan before this whole hiring a consultant and scope of work was created. We had identified speeding issues there. We had received concerns from the residents. We did preliminary evaluations. We identified these 2 as potential locations for implement traffic calming, traffic management. So these went to council when our work plan went to council before the fiscal year last year, and these were on our work plan. Due to the neighborhood's communication with the city council and the council initiated item, as I mentioned, Mayor Kranz brought an item to the council specifically triggered by Quail and mostly by Quail and Saxony were mentioned. The report kind of starts by talking about Quail and how it's impacted, but then does not stop there. Goes beyond and saying we recommend staff figure out ways of improving citywide city streets in the vicinity of these development projects. So how it triggered, that report was triggered by Mayor Kranz, and how staff were directed after led us to kind of double down on our work plan where Quail and Saxony, we already had it there. And this is a little bit different from what that consultant we anticipate coming out. The projects that would come out of that might be, I guess, low-hanging fruit type, quick build type projects such as these, but our anticipation is there'll be larger projects like longer sidewalk corridors, removing the median, for example, here on Quail, an addition of the buffer, widening the bike lane. That are like larger scale projects where additional improvements are identified, and then those will be designed, and we might need hundreds of thousands for those, millions for those. We don't know because they're just starting, I think, later this week or next week. So there is a little bit of a difference. This was just quick build, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 70,000, depending on how many of these measures we choose and how many of them we implement. If we just choose the stop sign of Via Zemia, we can do it with $3,000. If we just say, okay, only do one of the raised speed tables, we can do it with $10,000. Depending on what we pick and choose, this can go parallel. My goal tonight, and again, I'm not asking for approval. My goal tonight was for the commission to look at these different alternatives here and give me input on the corridor. Hey, we like these, add this one there, or no, these ones we don't like. I heard somebody mention, I don't like this signal at the Christian Court. So my idea was to get input from the commissioners on these different solutions. Now, chair's motion might be, yeah, we like these, but we don't want to recommend them until we hear back about other areas of town. So that's also totally fine. If I get to a point where I'm presenting my action on my work plan items, which was Quail Gardens included, if I'm writing a report for my council, I can say, well, we provided some alternatives to the commission where we thought these might be some effective quick build type projects. And commissioner said, yeah, we like these, but we don't like to recommend them because we're waiting for everything else in the city. Or no, we didn't like them. That can be your motion. We don't support these, we don't like them, we think we can do better. But I'll receive your input, and I'll put it in my report for council, no matter what it is.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion here that we immediately recommend to the council putting in four-way stops at the two major intersections here, which is, of course, Ecke Ranch Road and Kristen Court, understanding that four-way stop signs or all-way stop signs are a temporary measure and can be taken out in a year or two when something better comes along and can get funded. Do I have a second?
Okay, I'm not hearing a second. I do want to address Abe's comment to all of us, which was he was looking for input on these designs or recommendations. And so I'm going to just quickly go through my thought on all of these for you. So my first one is the bottom pedestrian, the bottom, well, actually, let's start with the stoplight. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but the stoplight is being built by the developer, and that's through planning, and that's their planning and design, and we don't really have a say in that. So that is going to be a stoplight, correct?
I'm not aware of the status. I mean, Dina might be able to help. Has this gone to Planning Commission? We're kind of getting.
I don't believe so.
I don't think it has yet. Okay. Once it gets approved as a condition of approval at the Planning Commission, then it becomes a responsibility of the developer to build.
So the stoplight is planning. The crosswalk, or that diamond with the crosswalk there, I am not in favor of that at all. I feel like that is a crosswalk to nowhere. You're walking across the street into nothing. So I don't think there's anything on the other side of the street there. I'm not in favor of the roundabout. The only stop sign I am in favor of is the one that data shows that it is supported. So the one stop sign that was warranted, I am in support of that. And the other pedestrian crosswalk, I think that is also crossing to nowhere, so I'm not in support of that. So that's my input on those. I don't know if you're writing them down individually or you wanted us to make a consensus, but what I look at here is the only warranted, data-driven piece is that one stop sign. And so I am in favor of that stop sign.
Since I've never done it, I mean, I guess there can be a start, but I've never done mentioning commissioners' names in my council reports. So I'd rather have, if possible, I don't know if you can get to consensus the way I'm hearing, but if commission makes a position, it's a lot easier for me when I'm writing the report for council to say this was the commission. But again, if you think you're not going to have consensus, I totally understand and respect that.
I can make a motion. I move that out of all of these, I'm going to need help with this motion, out of all of these safety and mobility improvements, I support the warranted stop sign and not the others. I don't know. Dina, can you clean that up, or? I don't know. We'll see if I have, I don't know if I have a second, so maybe it doesn't matter. He could be.
Well, we've had a lot of conversation about Vulcan. Is there some way we can weave that into our motion? Or are we not?
I would
Is that-
recommend not to get into trouble with Brown Act. I'd recommend leaving it for the commissioner corner.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's not really in any way or sort connected to this report, so it would.
Yeah, I guess, so I am in favor of this one stop sign. My concerns is if we go through and suggest these others, that we don't know the implications, not only financially, but also what are the other implications on the other streets. I mean, that was something else that was brought up. If all of these are implemented, how is that impacting Saxony? How is it impacting all of the other streets? Is it going to divert traffic? So again, I am not comfortable suggesting all of these changes be implemented before we have the data to support how it's going to impact other streets and what is equitable for all of the other neighborhoods. So the data.
Is that we're not comfortable moving forward until we have the data.
Yeah.
I think, right? 'Cause otherwise-
So I guess then, thank you. So what was my motion? So
The
my,
motion is to not make a decision until we have the data back from the consultant.
okay.
All the projects.
So that's my motion. I am not comfortable making a decision until we have data back from all of the other projects, how this will impact them. I didn't say that well. Maybe you need to say that into the microphone.
Know if we're accomplishing what Abe set out to accomplish with the agenda, but I think our concern is we don't want this one to jump the line, and we'd like to hear back from the consultant and the data that they require, and then we can make a better decision on how we would treat Quail Gardens alongside their other recommendations.
No, I understand that. I think we can make it into a motion, not to support this project as these projects at this time until the completion of the study directed by council on February 15th to start by, we'll figure out the language, but.
Yes.
Could I make a comment, please?
I think we have a motion. I think that the procedure is, do I have a second? Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I've got a
You made the
second.
motion, didn't you?
Oh,
Who made the
sorry.
motion?
Who are we attributing the motion to?
I would think,
You can say Hansberger.
I was going to suggest you.
Yes.
And then he's going to second you.
He's gonna
So you,
second.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
okay. So after we have a second, now the procedure is that you can make a comment.
You make a comment on the motion? Oh, okay. So I understand your motion that there's just a single stop sign at Zambia, correct? No. So, okay, none of them. So, to do nothing.
Did you write it down?
I did not.
Oh, I thought that was.
So the summary is, from
I'm the
what
only
I
one who's
heard,
confused.
not to support the staff recommendation for safety mobility enhancements on Quail Gardens Drive as presented tonight until the study supposed to be conducted by the consultant for the citywide safety and mobility enhancement in the vicinity of development projects is completed and presented to the commission.
Is there a schedule for that study?
I would say 6 to 9 months at least.
Okay. Okay, my comment is that I think this money is evanescent, and if we don't take it now, if we don't take advantage of it now, it may not stay, may not be here in 6 or 9 months. And since these recommendations are quick build projects, they won't be that expensive. So I would recommend that we do what we can now And that would be more than just a single stop sign at Zambia, because I think that a lot of speeding occurs south of that, since it's downhill. And so more is needed than just that stop sign. The roundabout would be one step. Something at where the traffic light is, Kristen Court, would be nice too. That traffic light will be too long, who knows how many years. So I think something near there is needed as well. A stop sign or roundabout, but not a traffic light.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I think we should vote on it and then see what happens with that motion, and then we can move on from there.
Can we repeat the motion, please?
Abe has it.
I'm sorry, I don't repeat them at Planning Commission.
Oh, okay, so
usually the
amended.
planner would or the
Okay.
chair.
Sorry,
So,
Amanda
no
normally does.
worries.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to repeat the same thing, but what I understood was Commission does not support the safety mobility enhancement on Quail Gardens Drive as presented tonight until the completion of the safety and mobility enhancement in the vicinity of development projects citywide is completed as directed by council on February 15th.
The commissioners, or the consultant study, yes.
Correct.
We have a motion on the floor, so I think we should vote, and then we can move on. We can move either way, so I think what we have to do, policy or procedure, is that we vote, so
Can I ask a question before we vote?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wong, made a statement regarding the funding for this project perhaps disappearing, if in a period of 6 to 9 months, and I'd like some clarification on that.
I don't think this project has been funded, and it's my understanding the project is not funded, and I don't think the budget for next year has been set. This would be a quick build project, but Abe can.
Yes, we have a quick build fund that was added to our general mobility account. We have an account called general mobility where it usually gets around $300,000 per year. This year, we received an additional $300,000 for implementation of some quick build projects. There is still some funding in there. If we're going to get the additional $300,000 quick build funding this coming fiscal year again, we don't know yet.
So it's general fund money?
In a way, it's not a tagged CIP project per se. It's we have discretion over the fund that we're using for this project. If we're using it, we can use it somewhere else if that's what you're after. The money will not be wasted. We will use the money somewhere else.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the vote was to send this as a recommendation to council, not to necessarily do this, but to ask the council to approve it.
Correct. So if it goes to council, I will mention that at this commission night on April 10th, this was reviewed by the commission and was not supported because of this reason, because commission wanted to see the full study before making a determination.
Thank you for stating the motion multiple times, Abe. I think we should vote. So I think it's on your screen, so you can either click yay or nay. I think, yeah.
I'm sorry, the title of the motion says provide input and recommendation, recommend to City Council, which sounds different from what Abe described as the motion.
We are giving our input on this agenda item, and that is our input. Our input is exactly what we just said.
I'm just
Okay,
waiting
so-
on Commissioner Wong to vote. I can force the vote here. Oh, you got it. Okay.
So the motion passes 6-1. Thank you very much. Thank you to the public for all of your input and for sticking around for so long. It's much appreciated. And I look forward to seeing the report from the consultant. Our next agenda item is 8, and it is the city traffic engineering report. When we look at that, I think letter A is safety and mobility project updates. So, Abe, do we have any project updates? I'm going to pull, just so commissioners know, if you want to see a bigger this, you can click on the agenda item and then click on the documents and you can make it larger if you want, or not. So Abe, do we have any updates?
Usually our practice has been, for this one on the log, commissioners just ask questions if there is any question on it. I think our
Thank
former
you.
chair, Van Neumann,
I will.
established this to save time.
Thank
If there
you.
are any questions, I'll answer.
I will cross that off of my notes. I won't ask you that ever again. And now I will go to, do any commissioners have any questions or comments?
Question? Thank you. I have to ask about the Rancho Santa Fe improvements. It's my neighborhood. So design is completed, and that's the design on the presentation that you did a couple of months ago with the various improvements and the restriping.
Correct, yes. The direction received from commission that night was to kind of change and kind of provide walkway, bikeway on both sides equally, not to favor the west side. Our idea at that point was because of the trail that at some point will be constructed on the east side, we gave most of the available extra width to the west. With the commission direction, we revised it. It's going to council this 26th.
And then it looks like there's a estimated completion date in the winter, so the work will commence sometime this summer?
We do have a relatively considerable set aside for this in our budget that will be grandfathered into the next fiscal year. So we will carry on that budget. If council blesses the design, I am optimistic we should be able to finish it this year.
Thank you.
Well, I guess winter of '24.
Could I ask, is this the new follow-up log?
No, we still have the follow-up log. This is the updates.
Right, my apologies.
No worries.
I'm sorry, did anybody else have another question? I was just going to follow up on the Eolis traffic circle. I know that, can you give us an update on that?
So a contractor was hired, I think the schedule is later this month, to shift the circle per the blessing of council 2 months ago. We will move it, and we are supposed to revisit it in 3 months after the mini roundabout is shifted, analyze the data again, and go back to council with potential permanent modifications, or I guess semi-permanent, depending on what our funding availability and fiscal constraints are at that point. But that was the direction we got from council last time. Shift the circle, reevaluate, and come back with additional beautification options.
Okay, perfect. And I missed the date that you're expecting the circle to be shifted.
It should be later this month.
Okay.
We do have a contractor. Yeah, it should happen this month.
And then you're going to evaluate that for a while and make sure that's what we want for permanent.
3 months, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I missed that. Okay, if there are no other questions about the safety and mobility project updates, I think we can move on to B, the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission log. Any commissioners have comments, questions? I'm going to pull it up on my screen so I can just look at it a little closer if anybody needs that. I must be on the wrong one. Sorry.
I do have a question. As far as scheduled date standing, can you clarify what that means?
So many of these items, there are a lot of different factors that affect implementation, funding, available resources. Some I can say are related to development projects. Anyone specific you want me to explain why there is a standing in front of it?
Well, yes, of course, the two that I proposed. One was number 60. Thank you for the item numbers return. So number 60, the signal timing for bicycles. And the other one is number 57, bike loop detection signage. So at least the first one was, well, actually, they're both medium priority. So, but one of them has a date and the other one is standing.
Yeah, the signal timing evaluation for citywide intersections, we have to hire a consultant to do. We have about 60 signals to do new signal timing evaluation, signal timing plans for every intersection. That's easily 100,000 plus to hire a consultant and do the timing and implementation of that timing. We do have our LPI HC project ongoing right now. We're hiring a consultant to do a citywide evaluation of our traffic signal, identify potential improvements at our cabinets, upgrade our signal controllers from old 170s to 2070 controllers, get LPI timing plan. My goal is when they're doing our new timing plans for our LPI implementation, I task them with conducting some extra analysis and get to some better minimum greens for our bicyclists too. So that way we kind of use the economy of scale and the fact that they're doing signal timing for 60 intersections for us anyways, might as well incorporate bike timing into that timing plan, into those timing sheets too. I don't have a timing for that. The RFP is going out Wednesday this week. When we hire, it would be probably 2 months from now. Another 3 to 6 months for the consultant, I guess, to wrap up their work and give us the timing plans. Another 3 months to get authorization to implement from Caltrans. It's $1 million to $1.2 million, 100% from Caltrans. We're not spending a dime. Another 3 months to get the money from Caltrans for implementation. Another, I guess, 3 to 6 months to order the material, new controllers, new timing sheets. So it's probably a good year to 18 months.
Want to revamp the whole thing? Is that?
I mean, unless there is like I remember there was this Ballure and Encinitas Boulevard that we received comments and we looked at it and we were like multiple seconds short, like 3-4 seconds for bicyclists to clear that up. If there is a specific intersection that you feel like there is a major safety concern there, I don't want to arbitrarily just choose an intersection and change timing there. But if there is a specific location, shoot us an email or just let us know. I'll look at it.
Yeah, I was mainly concerned with wide streets such as Lucadia crossing El Camino Real, because that's like 8 lanes, and so bicyclists don't accelerate quite as fast as cars. But there are only a few intersections like that in the city.
Yeah, I can look at those. I mean, the thing with those wider intersections, we usually don't get cut off at the minimum green. We usually have enough cars to kind of support some extensions, and usually the main corridor, our 2 and 6 phases, I mean, at El Camino and Lucadia, we don't even cut off Lucadia.
Yeah, it's just my experience is that
most of them max out pretty much.
Like early in the morning, like 5 or 6 in the morning, the's not enough.
Yeah, maybe if there's nobody around. Yeah, maybe when it's running free at, yeah, I can certainly look at it for those wider intersections.
Okay, thanks for your explanation.
Other commissioners have comments, questions?
I'd just like a little more detail on the line item that has to do with Vulcan 64. So,
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we did some preliminary evaluation last year for possibility of realigning parking on the west side of Vulcan, converting it from perpendicular or diagonal to parallel to the road, opening up space for creating the walkway on the west side of Vulcan between the tracks and the parking. We applied for 2 grants, well, I guess 1 grant, but 2 times, like with SANDAG and with ATP at the state level. Unfortunately, we were not successful. We have implemented many quick build projects on Vulcan. As you know, we've done the speed tables. We've done, I think, 3 of those. We've done the lane narrowing. We've added the edge line. We've added some signage. We've done the pavement legends. We have done RFPs. We have done multiple quick build projects last year over there. This specific project is beyond the scope of quick build. It's really tough to estimate with all the ADA issues that we have. Initially, our estimate was about $500,000. Now we think it might be a lot more than that because of ADA concerns and the bottlenecks that we have with different stuff going on the west side. That's why it kind of doesn't line up with the other quick build projects that we consider and talk about, like similar Quail Garden, what we talked about. All of those together might be 50,000, 75,000. I mean, this by itself probably is 500 to $1 million. So it's a little bit of a tough comparison, but I cannot really put a date on this because there's no funding. Council hasn't directed the staff to design. Design by itself probably needs a good, I don't know, 100,000 maybe to finalize the design for that walkway stretch on the west side. And then implementation obviously would be a different story. So that's why I really can't have I do have high, but then it's scheduled as TBD. I can't really put a date there.
And there's no other departments that have any kind of project in the works for Vulcan?
We are repaving the road. That I know our CIP team has it on this year's list of roads that will be repaved. So the pavement condition and the striping condition will not be like this. I know it's going to
That wouldn't
council.
include any like pedestrian improvements?
No. Just the existing striping will be refreshed on a new pavement, basically.
Okay. Is there, I guess I'm just wondering if the rest of the commissioners think that we should document, the conversation we had today about Vulcan and,
I think I would like to. I think we do that in Commissioner's Corner.
Okay.
But I appreciate you asking about the update because I think that is important, and I didn't want to interrupt you. Were you?
Yeah, no, then that's fine.
So, Abe, as we look at this project, we've been talking about it for a really long time, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness on Vulcan because I know you've put a lot of energy in there, and the raised crossings, actually, I use them quite often because I do run down there, and it has made a difference, and I do feel safer crossing there, so thank you. But I still am terrified running along that road, which I do quite often, because it's my only way to get out, to the beaches, or to the coast highway. Instead of actually saying we're going to make a path, is there some way that we could just say that we were going to do a maintenance project and turn all of the parking parallel along Vulcan and just move the stops? Because really, that is all we need, and I still feel like we had such a missed opportunity when that project was initially done, that they fixed the area for parking, because we couldn't park there before. I don't know, maybe commissioners don't know the history, but the area along the train track was not city, we don't own it, but we were not allowed to maintain it. I think Tony got agreement with NCTD, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Abe, and basically took a hold of that piece of property. And when that happened, you guys kindly designed the it's not DG, but it's pretty good. You've flattened it out because it was a disaster, and now there's parking and backstops. If those backstops had just been pulled out and we could park parallel instead of nose in, you pretty much give us exactly what we've been asking for the last, since before COVID, I've been coming and asking for this. So is there any way we could do just a maintenance project and move the backstops and turn parking to sideways and not call it a path? And then we don't have to say, then we don't have to meet all of the ADA requirements. And if it dead ends in a spot, I'm okay, I can jump out. It would be a huge improvement for our neighborhood. So I'm just,
The fact that we all know that council is aware of this situation, I really don't see how I cannot really write a report on such a thing.
okay.
Similar to what we had a similar conversation last time on a different topic, and also what our vice chair mentioned earlier. Commission has the authority, and we have done this before with our previous commission. Obviously, many of you weren't at the commission, but in cases like this, the commission would draft a letter to council under the chair's signature that we discussed this at the commissioner corner. We need direction from council with regards to this. We need support from council for this. We want to take this on. We want to ask the staff to do this. We want you to direct the staff to do this. So you can draft a letter in any way or form that you like. There's really nothing for me to recommend or write a technical report on or evaluate. If you tell me, Abe, we want you to analyze the width that's out there, I can go look and come back and say, well, we have this much width here, we have this much width here. That part I can do, but to initiate a project, something that council is aware, they're looking into implementing, they're trying to make it happen, I really don't see what I can do on my end. But yeah, if you have a position, if commission has a position, I've mentioned it last time when the red light cameras came up.
Okay.
Do express your voice to council, and then it could be a lot easier when council directs the commission, okay, yeah, this is a great idea. We want you guys to do this and give us recommendation or support. At that point, we have clear direction from council that they're willing to consider this.
Okay, thank you. We will discuss this in Commissioner's Corner, and then I will circle back with you individually so we aren't discussing it in the middle of a meeting, to how to proceed with that. And I'm sure maybe a few other commissioners would be interested in participating. Okay, specifically the one that brought it up. Okay, perfect. Any other questions about this?
Maybe I'll just give an update on line item 66, which I caused, my first one, I think. So just to give everyone an update here, I asked Sergeant Tay, it sounds like I need to talk to Sergeant Collis about the citation data. But once I have the citation data, I think I will be ready to prepare a report for you all to see first, before maybe drafting a letter to the commission. So just an update there. And I'd recommend for everyone on the council to really, as Abe had mentioned, the Switters data, and then you can go to the website. I see Berkeley put together a free tool called TIMS. Allows you to do a lot of the mapping, answer any question you want. It's very user friendly. So, some of the commissioners asking earlier about speed data. So, what types of collisions there are? You can drill it down. You can see is this person been drinking? It will tell you if there's a pedestrian involved, bicyclist involved. Tell you how high speed it was. So you basically ask it any question, and it doesn't take long to learn. So I'd recommend it for everyone to try it.
Can you just spell that website or say it slower?
Yeah, I'll need to look at the exact URL. It's basically Berkeley has open sourced the tool, so it's under the berkeley.edu domain, and it's Switters data, which is SWITRS, and then TIMS is the kind of the name of the program.
TIMS, yeah.
TIMS.
Yeah, if you Google TIMS Berkeley, it comes up.
Yeah, it's the first result. And then just, there's definitely a bunch of different modules you can use. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help you over email. Just takes a second to get used to it, but it's very cool.
Okay, thank you. And then I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the Hygeia roundabout, because that is my plot in life, to discuss the Hygeia roundabout. And as we heard from a community member tonight, it has been on the books for 20 years, 2 decades. So I know you wrote grants and applied for it. And is there any status?
No, the Sandag one this year didn't fund it. We will continue. We're not giving up. I do know that every 2-3 months, whenever something comes up, we put together application. We're getting a little bit more, I guess, savvy. We're going after grants that are not even exactly in line with what we want to do. We're finding a way. It could be a cultural grant. It could be a I don't know. Like we're finding grants that we're applying for that I'm not even sure. Like they laugh at us, but we're applying. We're gonna be successful. I'm pretty sure at some point we'll get something. So.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate the grant writing effort and going above and beyond. I know it's a lot, so thank you.
Most of the grant writing for the roundabout are done by our friends at our CIP department, our CIP division.
Okay.
But I do know that they're working really hard.
Okay,
I
well,
do know
thank
they
them
applied-
for me,
yeah,
please.
2 or 3 different grants they applied last year.
Okay, thank you. Fingers crossed. Okay, I appreciate that. Any other? Yeah.
I just have one question. Abe, what is a bike loop detection sign? What does that mean, and where are they implemented? What is that?
This was initiated by one of our commissioners. I think it was Commissioner Wong that brought it up. There is a MUTCD pavement legend and a sign that accompanies it that kind of clarifies for the bicyclist where is best to stand to be detected by the loop for the signal to detect them when there is no car around or when they want to be detected to get their green to pass the signal. So this basically marks up the location on the ground where it's better for them to stop, and the sign kind of reemphasizes that.
Yeah, I could explain that a little better, because a lot of intersections are triggered by, I think most of the intersections that signal light is triggered by a loop detector is inductive loop. And that inductive loop requires that a bicycle, if it's triggered, has to be in just the right place. Cars don't have that problem because it's a much bigger mass of metal. Often you can't see that loop because the street has been repaved, and so it's hidden. And so it's hard for the bicycle to trigger the signal. It helps a lot if you put the bicycle in the right place. And all this is requesting is that a symbol be painted for the proper location to put a bicycle to optimally trigger the bicycle, trigger the loop. And as Dave pointed out, there is a symbol in the MUTCD. I think it's 9C.7 or something like that. So in the MUTCD for the location. So it's right there. It's just a matter of painting a symbol.
Hey, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, on to our next agenda item, which I think is that development projects? And I think, is that one just for our review?
Yes, that's, I guess a year and a half ago, Commission requested to get some information on different development projects going on in the city. And if there is a question or more information needed on one, Commission can let me know and I'll bring back the information next meeting, or I can just email the commissioners.
Are there any questions on these development projects? Okay, on to Commissioner's Corner.
Okay, I do have an item, but I know there's a queue, so I'm willing to wait.
I'm happy to go any direction. Who wants to start? Why don't we start? Okay, she's giving it up to you, Commissioner Wong.
Okay, thank you. So I've been meeting with Bike Walk Encinitas and also some council members about the situation at Paul Ecke Central School. So in case you're not familiar, Paul Ecke Central is a school that's right off of Vulcan, and it's actually quite close to quite a few houses. It's ideal distance for hundreds of houses for students to walk or ride to, but it's not very safe because it's a 2-lane road going to Paul Ecke School, and Vulcan is also, as we now know, it's not very safe for pedestrians. So there's quite a bit of car traffic there, and often parents are in a hurry to drop their kids off and leave, and so it's not very safe. So I've met on 2 occasions with people from Bike Walk Encinitas, and the second time was also with Councilmember Hinsey and the mayor, And also, I believe the city engineer, Abe, was there, thank you, for recommendations on how we can improve that. We didn't reach definite conclusions then. I think you suggested maybe installing cameras to see how many, what transgressions there may be. I guess, has that been done or not?
We met with the principal yesterday, I think, and we were planning on putting the cameras out this week, but apparently I think their sixth graders are on camp or something, so they're not at school.
They're on vacation
So
now.
yeah, it's going to be next week. But we finalized the location of the cameras with the principal, and I do believe this Wednesday there is another meeting at the school. I think I'm going to be there too.
Correct, on April 12th. Yes, so mainly I want to bring this to the attention of the commission, put it on the log so we don't forget about it. But I believe that action should be taken to improve the bike and walk access in a safe way to the school, because that, of course, will be a climate-conscious way of improving student access to school. Plus, it's good for the students. Well, it's good for everyone if there aren't as many cars there, because right now it's rather dangerous. And it's not very much fun for parents either. And as Abe mentioned, I forgot to mention the Principal Sechrist was also there. So we do have a number of people on our side. The PTA, I think, is at least one of the members was there, and we're going to work the PTA. So there's quite a bit of momentum on this. I think the commission should be behind this as well and should be on our log.
Yeah, I agree. Way to bring that up, Commissioner Wong. Yeah, we have the meeting in 2 days as well, which is great. And actually, I know you were absent last meeting, but we actually had a speaker who, in public comment, spoke on improvements for ECI as well that came here. So it was good to have that speaker comment. And then one final thing I'd mention, just for everyone, is we're trying to get some local Encinitas celebrities to lead some bike buses as we get into the spring. So the bike bus is sort of the craze of parents leading the kids in a bus of bikes, so that it's really safe on the street. And there's been some parents going around trying to get some of the local Encinitas celebrities to potentially, be the draw for the 7:30 a.m. Call to the park. That will get more. I think it's more for the parents than it is for the kids, but as a way to recruit more parents to ride with their kids. So
Yeah, it's for everyone. So everyone's invited 7:40 at Pawlackie School on Wednesday, April 12th. If you want to see what the situation is like.
yeah, so I agree. Definitely we should get down the log.
You might need two commissioners to get it on the follow-up log, so I also support this, and as a parent whose kids went to Pawlackie many moons ago, I am quite aware of the situation, so I appreciate both of you taking some action on helping improve mobility there. So we want to add this to the follow-up log. What are we going to call this? Pawlackie mobility?
Yeah, I think it starts with the evaluation, right? So we're doing the camera.
Yeah, it can be called Pawlackie Safety Mobility Opportunities, Active transportation improvements, yeah.
Perfect.
And I guess I'm just wondering, in the past, we created a subcommittee. It was 2 commissioners, and we wrote a letter. And Abe was talking about writing a letter to kind of document, where we stand on Vulcan Avenue. We can certainly fold in what Commissioner Wong is talking about, but I think it would be good for us to formally put a letter together last time it was to the Planning Commission, but Abe, you were saying it should go to City Council, or?
Correct. If commission is after a direction from council to initiate a project, or as Chair mentioned earlier, to create a project that doesn't exist at the moment, I think it's better to come down from council to us rather than us taking it on, which might take a lot of energy from the commission, staff, evaluation, data collection. And if it doesn't have support from council, it wouldn't go anywhere. So that's why I suggested, similarly last time when the idea about the red light cameras came, I said, well, it might be better to see what the taste is at council. Is it something that they're willing to consider before us spending time and energy on it? So similarly with Vulcan, we know what the Vulcan project is. we're after that walkway. I think it's safe to say that, I mean, striping work, we've done it. We know we're not going to widen Vulcan anytime soon. It's not going to happen. The sewer, the drainage work is a, I don't know, 10 million plus project. We're not talking about that. We are talking about that walkway on the west. Now, if that walkway is a DG path, this is a luxury CRT version that we built in Cardiff. Is it a no project, just somewhere to walk on? As Chair mentioned earlier, just realign the cars, leave the dirt to us. Like none of this is new to council. If it's just a position of commission, just send your position to council. Hey, council, we as a traffic commission representatives of public, we think this is the best approach right now. Please provide direction to the staff to take this on this way.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea, and I think there's a lot to say about Vulcan, and starting with that path. So I think we can think about writing a letter. I don't know if you were saying you would be willing to do it. I would also like to join you on this, and just see where it takes us. I know we also do have the benefit of doing a commissioner-initiated item, so I think we can start with a letter, but also, I mean, a commissioner-initiated item of turning the parking sideways, you know? I mean, I don't know, but it's just a thought. So I'd like to do this, so I'll circle back with you and we'll get together this month and work on all of this.
Sounds good.
And just for the Brown Act, I think we are allowed to have 3 people. So if anybody else is interested in joining us about Vulcan, I know you're actively involved and you're actively involved. So I think we can have one more commission member join us on this. I'm just counting, I think so.
We had a similar case where a letter that was for a development project, I believe, recently. 1 or 2 or 3 members. I'm not sure if it's 3. I think it's 2, but I can update you what the Brown Act entails. But whatever that draft letter is, it will be discussed at the commission meeting, and if there are revisions needed on the dais or off the dais, it could be continued. Okay, commission discusses the letter. Okay, we'd like to change these areas of the letter. It goes back and comes back again. So it's not like once it's written, it has to be sent to council the way it's written.
Perfect. We'll bring a draft. Hopefully we can get it by the next meeting. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I also wanted to bring up the process by which you're expected to get speed cushions on a street. So I've been going through this. We had a speaker earlier today talk about it on Euless. It's actually the area I live in, Leucadia. There was a big accident on Hymettus that she actually mentioned, and it didn't go up, but this is the printed out picture. There's a car going roughly 60 miles per hour on a residential road. There's skid marks going into the car. You can imagine if it doesn't hit the car, it's going through the house. So that's alerted a lot of neighbors. A lot of people want to understand how they can get speed cushions now. As I understand the process, we do a traffic evaluation form, which I think anyone in the neighborhood can actually sign that. They don't have to live on the actual street. But then the speed cushion form, you have to actually live on the street where you're asking for the speed cushions. Then it goes to city. Then it goes to fire. And I think what I've heard, at least on my street, is the frustration is, we got the requisite signatures. It goes into a black hole. We don't hear anything for a while. And then the answer is, hey, the fire department isn't going to allow it on this street. This happened, I guess, on Euless before my time. And from what I can tell, there's no communication to the citizen on that this is what the process is going to be. So it's kind of like we put a lot of onus on the citizen to gather their signatures. They think they've completed it. They think they're good to go. And then they're told sort of arbitrarily, no, the lines on your street aren't allowed to do that. So I'm wondering, one, is there a way we can just cut this off where, hey, you go to the website, you put your address in, and they're like, no speed cushions on your street because the fire says no. That saves everyone a lot of time. Might not make them happy, but at least, So is there who owns that process? And again, in my experience with that workflow, it seems backwards. Like, why put citizens through that work if we knew from day one the fire department would say no to it?
So first, this process is actually one of the most clear processes of the city. This has been revised like 4 or 5 times. Every time went to council, there is a webpage for it. There is a flow chart for it. There is clear explanation of each step of the flow chart, how the process runs. It's on the city website, so everybody can go look at it. With regards to the process to simplify, I'm not going to go through every step. I might not even remember all the steps, but the simple way of explaining is it initiates with 10 signatures. Just one person, if they come and say, we want speed cushions on our road, would say, well, you're just one person. At least bring us 10 signatures. So the process initiates, and there's nothing needed, just 10 signatures from the residents of that road. After that, we have our criteria. There are like 5 criteria: speed, volume, geometry of the road, existence of a pedestrian generator, and lack of ped and bike facilities. So these 5 criteria, there are measures, okay, what the speed is, do we have any major pedestrian generators, a park, hospital, school. They're evaluated if they're warranted. If there is a speeding situation, 3 out of 5 warrants has to be met. If the speeding is not an issue, and our issue is 7 miles over, as I mentioned earlier, if the speed is 7 miles, 85th is less than 7 miles over, we don't consider it as a serious issue, and then they have to meet the other 4 measures. Once they meet it is where we go to fire. Now, our fire code, that's the state fire code adopted by the city council, states that traffic calming devices have to be approved by fire marshal. So that's in the code, council adopted it, and we follow that. If they decide to veto that, then we communicate with the residents, yes, you met the criteria, the requirements, fire department does not accept. We have asked our fire department on 2 or 3 occasions for the map that you mentioned about, can you give us a map in the city that these are the areas that we don't accept? They have notified us that it's better for the residents of the city to leave it on a case-by-case basis, because they might be able to authorize certain roads that if they don't do a due diligence, if they don't look at it objectively, they might easily blanket really say no, and they create a map that, I guess, reads 2/3 of the city. They're saying it's better for you not to have to, and then notify us case by case, let us look at it, and maybe we can allow that. That's why we don't have such a map. What they've told us, and we have maps for it, I'm not sure if it's uploaded, they have these high fire severity zones of the city. Those they've already told us no matter what the situation is, we're not gonna, I think, Olivenhain area, some parts of Francis Santa Fe were like that. They've told us that classified roads of the city we will not accept unless there are like criteria, like if council direction on it, or if we evaluate our response time specifically for that road and see if we can accept an additional few seconds of delay. So they've mentioned some ideas to us, but many roads like Eolas, as you know, Sheridan, they accepted Sheridan. Fire department said we're okay with the speed cushions on Sheridan, but then Eolas or Andrew, I think one of those, or Hillcrest, I'm not sure which one, we had a petition for, fire department said no. So it's really, really out of my hand. I mean, I can't force fire department for a map, but they've told us it's to your own benefit, to the residents' benefit, if we not give you a map. And so
That makes me, that sounds very arbitrary and very hard to, have the citizens accept that answer. And and not to mention, let's go with the data that's saying increasingly fire departments are adopting Vision Zeros. And they're saying like, hey, we can actually get better response times even with speed humps and even with, bike lanes. That's starting to get documented in some of the bigger urban areas in the United States. So is this something we can, I guess, is like to the residents of my neighborhood, do I tell them, hey, let's go, we should go talk to the fire department and we should really get involved? Because it's a little bit arbitrary, it sounds like. I mean, I'm sure
they do their due diligence. They talk to their captains. They talk to their the response team. Our fire marshal doesn't make this decision just by himself, but we don't question their judgment. If they say we have concerns over, our residents' safety, the fact that the code does authorize their, veto per se, I can't really question their judgment, their decision. We are basically on the same team. We're both, city employees.
Yeah, but the argument is nothing is redlined. If it comes back no, maybe it's just we need to talk to them more. Because
I can't really, say that they would change their mind if you talk with fire department more or less. I mean, they a lot of time they do meet with the residents. This has happened. We haven't directed people, but when we tell the residents, fire said no, they do contact the residents. Residents contact fire department and they meet with each other and discuss why the fire department feels that way. And there has been conversations. We did have a case where fire department, after conversation, accepted a version of a speed cushion for Tuna Ranch Road, northeast of the city. Initially, it's in a high fire severity zone. They accepted a offset speed table where the fire department, because of a super low volume of traffic on that road, the fire truck can basically meander between the speed tables. That way they justified this will not impact us as much, so we can accept this. And that was after rounds of conversations with the residents. So.
Okay, so the process, I agree. I did see the flow chart. So there is a flow chart that a citizen can understand, but ultimately it's going to be arbitrary once you get the signatures based on the fire's discretion at that time.
Our criteria is very objective. Our criteria, the speed has a number, the volume has a number, the existence of pedestrian generator has a number, geometry of a road. It's very, our process is very hard.
Ours not meeting the fire departments though, because that's
the
not
traffic
objective.
team's correct.
Yeah,
the traffic
the fire is not objective.
Yeah, we don't have a flow chart for them.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
just a box that says, does fire department approve? Yes, no. There's no.
Yeah, that's what's tough to the citizen, I think, Abe, is like if you make them go through all these hoops and then you're like, oh, by the way, the last hoop is we don't really know what's going to happen. Here it goes into the black box.
Well,
Are
there's
we
no hoop
wasting our
really.
citizens' time is all I'm saying. Like,
It's just
is
10
it-
signatures. If that 10 signatures, there's no hoop.
That's a lot of time, Abe. Like, we're putting people out for that. Like, they're just worried about their kids going to school. They got to go meet 10 neighbors. Like, there's people flying down the streets.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can change that signature. I mean, that's a council-approved process. Maybe we can ask next revision, we make that 5 signatures. I mean, I'm sure you're going to say you live somewhere and, you don't want one resident to initiate something. And in the end, it goes back to the vote of the residents. We still need 51%. So it's not like after even if fire says yes, it meets the criteria, fire says yes, we send out ballots.
Yeah, sure, I understand that.
And they still have to vote yes. So, yeah, maybe the initiation process can be with less number of signatures.
Or just the clarity on the fire department. I think they have asked for. I'm not saying 10 signatures is not impossible. I'm just saying you go through all that and then you're like sort of arbitrarily told yes or no. That seems weird, where it could just be like very clear. And an open discussion could be like, why is my road a road that the fire department has to go down really fast? Like, what is that about? That seems like it'd be much easier to start with.
I defer to our fire department. I certainly don't want to answer on their behalf. I mean, in a future meeting, maybe we can have a fire marshal. Our fire chief was here, I think, 2 meetings ago.
Yeah.
Maybe this is something that can be brought up. Commission can mention this, and I can ask them to come explain.
I think these are great questions, and it is difficult being a resident when you've gone through this and you don't understand why, as our speaker said earlier, why their street was shut down for, the speed tables, yet they're right down the street on Andrew or next to the hospital where that speaker works. Like, why is it okay that you have speed tables at a hospital where you've got ambulances flying in, or you need high speed to get in there? So I guess it is a little difficult with the logic. And then I guess my last point or question is there a way to go back and either get a review without having to contact the fire department directly? Like, for example, Eolas got shut down, but I don't understand, Eolas and Hymettus are 2 parallel streets. So why couldn't Eolas have the speed humps, but then the fire department just use Hymettus as their quick street or something? So I know this conversation is going on a really long time, and I apologize, but I do agree. Is there a way to ask you guys to review or can residents email back and ask you what was the reasoning, or is it just always it impacts travel times and it's up to the residents to hit the fire departments up?
I mean, the 3 reasons I've heard, again, I don't want to talk on, these are just the reasonings I heard. The 3 reasons: high fire severity zones, they have different maps that different zones of the city are considered high fire severity. Classified roads where they consider these roads are their paths to get to different areas of town, not necessarily to address situations on those streets, but to get other areas. And the third one was, there's a third one. Yeah, I don't remember the third one. But
Response times.
yes, the response times, they're saying in this location, we're kind of far from the nearest station. We're already, because they have, I think, a threshold of response time that they have to meet that. I'm not sure what that is, but I don't know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And we're already close to this, and we don't want to risk going an additional 10 seconds, 20 seconds because of these.
Thank you.
I have a procedural question. So when I was on the Environmental Commission, I could write a report, or subcommittee could write a report saying, let's ban styrofoam, and then send it to our city liaison, equivalent of Amanda, and then next month it'd appear on the agenda. So that'd be a commissioner-initiated agenda item. So how does that work here? Can we do something similar? Say I want to write a report on PEC and say we have these suggestions, you know, ABC, and if that's approved, then would that appear on the agenda for next month? And if it gets approved by commission, then it goes to council, and they can choose whether they want A, B, C. Is that how it works here?
I think so, but I'm going to defer to Abe because I asked this question at the last meeting. Actually, you weren't here, and I had asked about the same question because remember, I was with you on the Environmental Commission, and I worked on the balloon commissioner-initiated item. And so, but let's defer to Abe.
Yes, I think it's pretty similar. I think our Muni Code does have this language that says a topic that's discussed and a decision is made at the commission has to be heard by council. So if a commission initiated item is discussed here, there's a motion on it, it's approved, recommended to be heard by council, it will be taken to council.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
So I could write a report and then submit it to the commission, it'd appear on the agenda, and it'd go before the commission, and the commission would say, well, you ought to change ABC, or yes or no on this, and then it'd go to council eventually.
Well, I was going to ask Abe, when I did it with the balloon initiative, I was given by our staff engineer, he gave me a template that I used, and I basically followed along for my report. I worked with other commissioners, and then I sent it back to him. He reviewed it, gave me more input. So it was a bit of a back and forth, and I collaborated with two other commissioners. And then once I sent the report, I think, to him, he then maybe tidied it up and brought it to commission, even though I presented it. It was a little bit more, for me at least, of a collaboration with our staff. Who was our staff person? I've lost his name.
You mean Eric?
Yes, Eric. Yes, Eric. So I collaborated a little bit with Eric. So I don't know, is that how it works here, Abe? Do you have a template? Is it something you want to collaborate with before it ends up on the agenda? I think it has to run by staff, right?
Actually, I didn't use any template. I just wrote these reports. They did follow a fairly standard format, you know, with summary, agenda, key points, conclusion, that kind of thing. But I didn't follow a template, although it was a standard format. I probably stole it from somebody else, but
So I don't know, let's defer to Abe.
yes, indeed.
The ones that we've done, we haven't done that many, but I think Chair Van Neumann did one or two. It's pretty similar. We offer a template, one of our reports that we've done recently. Commissioner writes a report based on that. I don't necessarily need to review that, but it doesn't hurt if there is something that I might be able to help with the information in the report. I'll reflect back. Certainly no approval required from staff. It's a commission-initiated item, but that's about it. It's a pretty straightforward process.
Write a report with other people, you know, I could send it to you, or would it be to Amanda, or both?
Yeah. If you email us, Amanda will send you a template, and then don't worry about the formatting. We can take care of the formatting and everything. Once we're doing the formatting, I'll take a look at it. If I have any input or any suggestions, I'll send it your way, and then it will get on the agenda.
Okay, thanks so much.
Anybody else? Any other comments? Okay.
Sorry, I did one comment. I know I'm talking a lot, so I apologize. But so we talked a lot today about Quail Gardens and Vulcan and Saxony. It sounds like we have a lot of follow-ups with Vulcan. Like Saxony feels a little bit like the one that gets left out. Is that okay, or should we try to do something more for Saxony? I mean, Saxony's like the home of the YMCA. Those fields, YMCA is I think one of the pride and joys of Encinitas. It's an incredibly dangerous road. And I bike it a lot, I've had my kids go to preschool there. They go to the Y for the pool. So I don't know, we don't have anything for Saxony really brought up formally in the commissioner's log or anything.
Thank you. That is a great point. I do know that it is on your staff's work plan, isn't it? I saw that it is on the work plan. Do you guys have anything that you're gonna, are you working on it? What is happening?
Well, our idea was to do a similar approach for Saxony, similar to Quail, go evaluate, identify potential improvements. But with today's motion, I'm not sure if Commission wants to see that. Let me do some consultation with my director and figure out how we want to approach this. Because I mean, the fact that we made this motion to put it on the log to say staff to come back with potential options for Saxony, when we had this motion today.
Well, but I think they are very different roads. I mean, I do want to point out that there is absolutely nothing similar about them. I don't even think they're classified as the same type of road. So, right? I mean, they're not.
Our motion was because of that study that's underway, wasn't because this is not a good road for consideration. Obviously it's your commission, you can.
Well, right, but I mean, they are very different roads, and
Agreed.
Saxony does not have a housing element site on it. It's not going to be part of the $150,000 study. So I think because of it's not going to be included in that other study, this is you, but I'm just saying, I just wanted to address, your concerns that I don't think you can compare those two roads to each other personally. So anyway.
If I can comment on Saxony, one of the things that the commission did well on Saxony was to get the 25-mile-hour speed limit zone next to the senior citizens area and the YMCA. The commission pushed for 25 there, and we've got it. The other thing is that the housing element site in, what's it called? It's not called Avocado Acres anymore. It's called Tortilla Flats.
Clark Street.
What?
Clark Street.
Clark Street. I believe they're planning on having an access to that development off of Saxony rather than trying to go down the narrow Clark Street. And that means that Saxony is going to be impacted by housing element.
Yes, I'm not sure where that stands. I do know that there was at least one report where that wasn't going to be opened up, but then there was other discussions that it would be opened up. So I don't know where they are on if they're going to open up that road that is blocked off. But you are correct; it could potentially have an impact on Saxony for sure. But I guess I will support you in putting Saxony and maybe just getting an update on what the engineers are doing to help improve mobility and safety on Saxony.
Yeah, I think that's right. Bike lanes, accessible sidewalks, anything. I do agree the mile-per-hour limit is lower, but it is a fast street because it's so wide with room for cars from what I've experienced.
Okay, so can we get that added to do we need another person? I can't remember. I'm getting tired now. Is it 2 or 3 people to get it on the follow-up log? It's 2.
The person who suggested with 2 others.
With 2 others, okay. You suggested?
Yep.
Could you please repeat the Sorry.
Mobility improvements to Saxony and safety. I think today we spoke a lot of time. I think everyone is very concerned about Saxony.
Okay.
It's not going to be in that report.
Enough. I'll
Okay.
third that, or second or third or fourth or whatever it is.
Yes, perfect. That sounds great. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, if we have no more Commissioner's Corner, then may I have a motion, pardon me, to adjourn the meeting? I don't know, I'm following the rules. I got it written down here, so that is
I
what I'm
second.
doing. Okay.
I second.
Yeah, I second, yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Look, man, I got it written down, so I'm gonna read it, all right? I can't remember, but I am the chair, and gosh darn it, I'm gonna follow those.
You guys do have a lot to talk about.